done,
He's
right?
5 years old.
Yep.
He's
One of each.
some black
Exactly.
left, but not much.
Yeah.
No, I
They
kept
are.
breathing in
And
my
it
wife's
takes
ear.
them
and
so
it
long
kept
to
coming,
settle
coming.
down
Oh, yeah.
and to be an adult. You know, she's
What am I-
5 years old. She's not an
Yeah.
adult.
Oh, no.
Be good.
There's
Liam.
Not at all.
His name.
The kid, the
Yeah,
grandkids
my
feel like he
husband's
just
William or
goes,
Bill.
he wants to run, play,
William
chase it.
Liam.
Or wood floors.
Oh, yeah, that'll be good.
You can't paint them.
And then will you take a
No,
couple
we'll have to have
months
the
off?
same, as much
Yeah,
as
I
it'll be
haven't
the
checked
same.
my week, but maybe like 5 or 6 months.
Anyway, so yeah, so we.
I wish I would have known about this place when we went to Greece.
Yeah, no kidding.
Gave me so much
We just
time.
found out, look at that.
Because I've never gone out to the
Oh, max it
Yeah,
out,
ran
right?
across it. And looked at it, and then a friend of ours who does a lot of traveling.
Grandkid
So
will
we
be
should
on the
get on
way
and see Huskers.
a month from yesterday.
Oh, really? Where's your girl?
That'll be a boy.
It's worked out really well. We've
What's
got
his name?
I think they're gonna name him Ethan.
12
The amount of time they were doing.
But my husband, my son's wife is Brazilian.
Oh, I don't know.
Her last name's
Well, we had one couple
Cabral. So the
tonight.
name of the Ethan Cabral.
Oh, you interview them and stuff.
So we were already starting to call him Ethnic E.
Sure.
Do our due diligence.
Kind of excited. Like,
I
you know,
wanted
do
2
a
weeks.
That's
Oh,
at
his
least.
first grandkid?
That's at least we've.
Well, I mean, that's
Yeah.
really, that's
I like to think that I'm too young.
pretty good.
Grandkids, I hear, are the best, right? You can spoil them and give them back, and then get your full night's
Yeah, I'd
rest.
like to wait a few more years on that, but I don't have a choice now.
Whenever they're cranky, you just
It is cool.
Just went there today.
yeah.
Just so you know.
House carrots right there.
My dad feels the same way too. Grandkids are the best.
It's one more person for me to spend money on, is what it is.
There were our other base recordings.
I guess. That's pretty much. I
Well,
guess.
congratulations. That'll be exciting.
It would be. It is. It would be very exciting. We're quite excited. We're quite paying for it. Hey, that's your house up there? Up there on Kanema? Because I saw your white truck and
Yeah, the one for.
that's Bob's house.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, it's a great site, yeah. I think they have like 1, 2, 3 weeks, 1 month, 2 months, 3 or 4 months. So, yeah, it is a really, it's worked
The
out.
gang's all here.
Sorry about that. How do we do this again? Open light
Are
manager?
you going by our place or something?
Yeah, I went over to look at that lot.
Oh, you did? Oh,
And I wanted to see how it was quite selective for which houses are vernacular in somebody's letter. So, can we start?
We are about to start. Just give me 1 moment.
Oh, just
It's loaded.
say when.
Sorry.
That's good, that's good to hear.
Okay. I felt bad.
Get
for those
everything
people.
taken care of with planning that you were working on? You need to be up there a lot.
He's probably just looking for something to do. Is that what it is?
Just trolling.
We were adopted last year, but I can tell you a lot of what that means.
Hey, Christina.
Yeah.
Oh, cancel. Oh, wait. There we go. So you can't start. Are you hit? You're good. There we go.
Oh. Chair McLaughlin, we are all ready.
Okay, let's start at 6:04. The work session thing. If you want to call roll.
Sure. Cindy Toll,
Present.
Bob Stewart, Derek Budson, Chair McLaughlin,
Here. How about you, ladies?
Christina Robertson, Gardner staff.
Laura Turway, staff.
And we have Jonathan Stone, the new Main Street manager, who we'll introduce later in our work session.
Oh, all right.
Starting off, I'd like to reintroduce Laura Turway, our planner in the planning department, who is working on our sign code update. She met with you this fall and kind of talked briefly about the process, and she wanted to come back and kind of give you a little update of where we are and get a little, if there's any direction, I guess, that the board wants to give, this is a great time, or at least identify any additional issues you may want to chew on as they move forward in the process.
What if we have no direction?
You can say we have no direction. Or you have a split direction. She's basically coming to you to report back to her group of what has transpired here tonight.
Yes. Last time I talked to you was last summer when we were starting our sign code process. As you know, signs can help shape the character of a city. You can think of Las Vegas or Sisters or Cannon Beach or other types of cities with different various sign codes. So what I'm here to talk to you about tonight is our process of our sign code evolution, and then I'm not giving you what our actual proposed code is, but I will tell you where to find it and when to find it. But I did want to give you an update on where our community advisory team formed recommendations thus far. So as you know, we have a sign code that we regulate signage on private and public property within Oregon City. It'll tell us how many signs can be placed on a property, how many signs on a wall, how big those signs are, and so forth. The graphic on the screen is an example of our current sign code. The City Commission's goal for this year and next year was to update our sign code. It hadn't been significantly updated since at least the last 20 years. So we wanted to touch base with the community, make sure it's still in the right spot, and make sure that we have a sign code that is developed in a fair way and that is supported by the community. So there was a big importance on getting as much public involvement as we could throughout the duration of the sign code process. Our legal requirement is that we look at the dimensions, the material, the location of signs. We're not looking at the text of signs, just sort of where they can be and how often they can be in place. That's our legal thing. We put together a project team with the planning department. We hired a consultant, Enviro Issues. They have a sub-consultant, Herbsworks. And we put together an aggressive public involvement campaign whereby we created a community advisory team, or a CAT. And then we worked in a large part with our community, again, throughout the duration of our process. Our process started right after 4th of July with 17 community briefings. That's when we talked to you last. We met with every neighborhood association we can get our hands on, every downtown committee, chamber, anyone who would listen to us, we met with, and we tried to recruit for our CAT as well. We wanted to figure out what people liked about our sign code or other people's sign code didn't like, and areas to figure out where we should move forward and make tweaks. And we took those recommendations and moved them onto our community advisory team. We also created a project website. The list of everything, all the D&D features of our project website are listed on the screen. You could sign up for emails. Everything that we produced was posted on the website. All our comments that were received were posted on the website. It was very important for us to have a transparent process, so everything that was done is posted online for people to review and comment on. We also posted trail news articles to get the word out about our project, post signs around the community. So we created a community advisory team. We had certain positions that had to be filled. There were 11, and we had 11 applicants, and all 11 applicants were for different positions that were worked out very nicely for us. They were appointed by the mayor. And you can see the list of positions. We want to make sure that when we develop our sign code, that we talk to a diverse number of people from different backgrounds and perspectives, and that our CAT team also was diverse. So you'll see some sign manufacturers, neighborhood associations, chamber of commerce, development, some institutional uses. We had someone from a church, since we have sign code specifically related to churches. The purpose of the community advisory team was to form a recommendation to staff. And so they would put together a package of what the community would like to see for sign standards. Maybe they wouldn't address every specific question we had regarding signage, but they would do a bulk of it and come to some type of agreement regarding signage. We have a final report from them that is being reviewed by them before it's public. And so that is due back to us this week, tomorrow specifically. And yes. And so it will be online next week for everyone to see. It identifies all of the issues that the CAT formed strong opinions on. Places where they didn't form opinions, they had a couple split decisions. And then also it has at the end of it a recommended sign code from the community advisory team. City staff will then create a sign code coming from staff, and if we differ, we'll explain where and why we differ from the advisory team. Halfway through the process, so they met 4 times from September through December, once a month, and halfway through the process we had an open house. We wanted to pick the 13 most largest issues and get the opinion of the public. So we did a vote by dot. And for example, one of the questions was, should we allow new billboards in Oregon City? And yes, no. And so you vote. We had actually a really good turnout for that event, as shown in the pictures. And then the CAT took the recommendations from the public in that event and formed their final report and recommendations. Again, I already talked about the process. So we're reviewing their final report, and then staff's coming out with our final report within the next month. I want to tell you about the CAT recommendations thus far. They decided not to have specific standards for historic districts. When we met with you in the summer, you had also advised the same. So there are no specific standards for if you're in a historic district or your individually designated structure. These are your specific sign standards. We're relying on our current process, which is the design guidelines. We have our basic sign code, and then if you're subject to 1740 or historic review, then you have the design guidelines, which talk about materials as well. There is an exception, though. So in general, we want to keep the process the same. If there are any changes that we'd like to make to our sign code related to signs that are subject to 1740 or specifically within the boundaries of a historic district or an individually designated structure, we can do that. But at this point, it didn't seem as though we have any interest to do so. The only exceptions are that the CAT had recommended that we allow temporary banners for properties, and in that discussion there was discussion saying that they shouldn't be allowed within historic districts or for individually designated structures. Also, electronic message centers.
Are those the LED billboards?
Yeah, internally lit ones where message change. There was no consensus regarding electronic message centers from our CAT team, but there was discussion when we talked about it saying that they maybe shouldn't be in historic districts or for individually designated structures. So we know your design guidelines, if it is subject to 1740, you can't have an internally lit sign anyway. So it only would matter if you're not an individually designated historic structure in McLaughlin, until you're not subject to 1740 for just the construction of a sign. Do you have any input for me on any of this, or specifically banners, electronic message
Seems like we talked about that last summer with you about these two things.
Yep.
And correct me if I'm wrong, it seemed like our consensus was both these things were
Keep them the way they are, or?
wasn't it like no?
We didn't like the idea of electronic or LED.
Yeah.
Even for
posters,
non-designated.
billboards in the district.
Or the banners.
No banners, no internally lit sign.
Seemed like that's what we
Or
said.
electronic message centers, okay. Electronic message centers, we also, some of the question came up of, when you have internally lit signs, how often can the message change? So we have a policy now by our code, well, that it can't change more than once per day, so it's not continuously flashing. Our code says it can't be revolving, rotating, or moving in any way. So that's one of the things that we'll address as well. So you're suggesting that we have no internally lit signs in a historic district or an individually designated property?
Well,
Is that
In
right?
all of Oregon City.
But keep
Trying to clean things up. Laura, come on.
keep in mind that would also take out neon signs. Because that is an internally lit sign. Or am I incorrect on that? Because I think that's different.
Well, that's not a message center, though.
It's not a message center, but is
Well-
it considered an internally lit sign?
It is, but so we have an exception. Our code currently today does not regulate signs on the inside of windows. So, for example,
okay.
an open or closed sign.
But at the same time, there may be an appropriateness to have an external neon sign that's historically appropriate in like Main Street or even in 7th Street.
Yeah, which Main Street we have nothing to do with.
No, but I mean, there may be a future
Could be.
commercially designated historic building, and it would be nice to allow it to be reviewed through our process and not be preempted through
Yeah.
the code. Does that make sense?
What is the recommendation from HRB to solve that riddle?
I recommend you separate the two. Define them differently. Neon is neon and is internally lit as a boxed.
So
Internally
is
Just by description.
no internally lit except for neon when approved by HRB or just
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
approved by
Like
HRB through the 1740 approval process.
regardless of if you're individually designated or not?
Yeah, it's a district.
Okay.
Districts. Yeah.
Question is, we'll have to figure out what we need to do. I don't know how we can. I'm just doing my mental jumping here. Right now, if you're not a designated structure and you're in McLaughlin, the only way we can trigger you for review is if you meet the definition of new construction, which is pretty much an addition, a new building of 200 square feet or more, or an addition. Right now, a new sign doesn't give me a nexus to allow us to review it under 1740.
I think that's fine. That's a pretty small threshold already.
No, I'm saying, but I don't know if right now, if it's an historic building, we can review neon. But
Yeah.
if it's not a historic building, I don't know how we can't even, I don't know how, we have to change our code to allow a process to get them to us, even if it's an exception process.
No, I understand what you're saying. I still think it's fine.
Oh, that they don't get the exception process.
No, that the threshold for a 200 square foot addition or new building would trigger them coming here.
So if they just hung a neon sign on the corner of their house,
If they're not designated and they're getting a sign permit, right now, we have no way to trigger them
Well,
for historic review.
It's like Mike's Drive-In.
But they were okay because that was new construction. So
Right.
we could get them for that. So
So
we
he-
could get
he-
them for designated, but an existing non-designated building on 7th
Yeah,
Street, which is
yeah.
most of 7th Street, honestly, we don't have a trigger other
Kick
than
it over here.
yeah.
Other
they
than
have to go
that,
straight to the building division for their code, unless we work. I mean, we can go back to our
And is it
attorney
the
and
building that approves those signs?
it's all about clear and objective. You either meet it. It's an over-the-counter permit. You either meet it or
So you
don't.
guys do that planning.
Yeah. Over the counter. Here's the permit.
Gotcha.
Go.
And you have guidelines about where it goes after that. So could you refer on to HRB?
Well, we have to write in a nexus to get us to HRB. So maybe that's something we can talk back. If that's something the board is interested in, we'd have to talk to our attorneys
But
to
if
see
it
how
adds
we
things
get.
to us, we wouldn't want that.
Well, what you do is,
Well, maybe you put down criteria, and if they meet,
yeah. Well,
you know,
the thing is, we have there is a sign variance process that goes to the planning commission.
Yeah.
So the question is, is there a sign variance process that goes to the historic review board as part of
Right.
you know?
Right. So some
But you have to
internal
be
rules.
inside the district. The problem is now we're regulating probably 14 structures or 20 structures in total. So-
Regulation.
That's the problem. Is
I-
like we're
I
doing
don't
very
think it's worth it.
specific regulation for
I'm trying to
a
simplify
finite amount of
things.
structures.
Yeah, I don't think it's worth
Because
it.
Kanema we can get in anything.
No
in
matter
Kanema.
what.
Yeah, we have the ability. But the way the conservation district was created, it was that the 1983 Grand Compromise, which created this district, but only have 300 structures that we can actually review, and then plus new construction, and we define new construction as building a structure.
Certainly don't want to make it any complicated.
Are there any of those structures that now would have a problem with internally lit
They're
signs?
pre-existing. They're
They would be grandfathered.
Yeah.
Yeah, the recommendation from our CAT team was to allow all, if they were approved when they were constructed, that they could stay until the owner removes them. But if they were never approved, then they would still have to go away. So if they were approved, then we change our code to not allow them, say, internally lit signs or something like
Perfect
that.
example
Until it
would
falls
be
apart and
the
they're
Dairy
dead.
Queen.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an internally lit sign.
Yeah.
They got a new one, totally could do it. They just had to meet our process. They were
Yeah, they
allowed
got a
to.
new sign out there.
Yeah, but they got a new sign permit and they did it. So, and they weren't subject to our code because they weren't doing anything that was triggering the new construction.
Right.
So in all cases, though, it will come to staff. In any case, it'll come to staff.
Yeah, but it's very clear and objective descriptions
Right.
of what's approved. So,
Well, if in the application process, if you've got like line items of criteria that they meet when they apply for the sign, and what if you made it, well, if they trigger 3 of those criteria, then it goes to HRB. If it doesn't, then it just gets approved. And
right, but I think that goes back to we have to change our code to give us authority over
Right,
those.
right.
And basically say new construction goes to the board and some of these other things go to the board that aren't new construction but are now we're linking.
I would think that would be a decision made by the people issuing the sign.
No, it's
No.
it's more of we don't have historic authority on non-designated buildings in McLaughlin.
No, I'm saying that would be one of the criteria. Is it in the McLaughlin district? If that's true, if two or 3 other things are true about these applicants, and those things are checked, then it automatically comes to us.
Which
Then
means
it fits that bill.
which we'd have to change our code to do
Right.
that, our historic overview code to do that. Which we can do. I mean, we can change codes, but it just reminders the question of we are for the most part talking about non-designated structures on
Right.
7th Street.
Right.
Yeah.
As long as it isn't.
Oh, and a little bit high,
As long
too.
as it isn't an automatic trigger, so everything that comes through would come.
No, it would be more of
It'd be judgment
those
on-
things aren't allowed, but if you want one of the list of things, you have to go
Yeah,
to
there
the
you go.
Historic Review Board. And I think with the temporary banners, I can tell you, we've had a hard time. We just clear out, don't allow them, and there's basically that's been ignored. So we're trying to create, and Laura can tell a little bit more. We're trying to create some type of regulated reasonableness that says, here's your beginning, here's your end, and you need to stop putting your banner up and go put a real sign up and say you're a real business. But we understand there's a process when you start a business that sometimes you got to put a banner up so everyone knows you're here because your sign's still the sign company. You're not ready yet. So I don't know, Laura. What was there a time period that the CAT recommended for temporary signs?
30 days
Yeah.
per shot.
Yeah, that's fine.
And then it limits the number of time per year as well. The CAT did a really good job. There's a lot of these really specific small issues in our sign code, and they did a very good job weaving them all together
Have
and
you
addressing
run them
them.
out for public comment yet?
It will be next week, this week. And then so we went to the community trying to recruit people for a community advisory team, asked them what they liked, didn't like, had our community advisory team recommendation. Staff is now writing our recommendation as well as finalizing the final report of our CAT team. Those will be public soon. We submitted a legislative application. It'll go before the Planning Commission, City Commission, a series of hearings. We had one work session last night. It was only on the process part of it. We'll come back for another work session with the Planning Commission, have a few hearings with them. So a lot of any opportunity for public input during that time. Then it'll go to a City Commission work session and a couple City Commission hearings before adoption. So at the earliest adoption would be at the end of the summer.
Or fall, probably.
So there's going to be a long opportunity. We've been working on this for a while, but we're only halfway there. We want to make sure that the product that we have is good, and so we're trying to show it to as many people as we can. And again, where staff recommendations differ from CAT, we want to be explicitly clear on why that is. We want to let people know we're doing this, so we're sending out notices. There'll be more than 10,500 little postcards that will go out to all property owners within the urban growth boundary, so we're going outside our city limits a little bit. We talked about the process. So next step is our second Planning Commission work session where we're actually going to talk about what the CAT recommendations were and the code, and that is on March 24th. So to summarize from HRB, you are happy with the way the process is, except for if we do allow banners on a temporary basis, you would prefer that we didn't allow them in a historic district or for individually designated structures. And for internally lit signs, we need to investigate a way to allow neon type signs, but not allow any other internally lit signs in historic districts, or we're okay allowing them for non-designated structures in McLaughlin.
Okay.
Okay, so keep things the way they are. You're okay with the way things are,
Yeah.
Yeah.
except for, yeah, actually, then we don't need to make any changes at all.
Well, we can talk a little bit about the definition of neon. Because right now our code allows, our design guidelines allow neon through a historic review board process. And actually the High Cliff is a perfect example that I think was totally appropriate. You would have seen like that, and it's kind of second and third generation of tenants. So when they brought it back, they asked for that, and that did go through the historic review board. So that's kind of what I'm thinking of, kind of that
Yeah.
appropriateness, what you would have seen in
Right.
historic downtowns and those neon signs, and they should be allowed in our historic districts.
Yeah. Clackamas Auto Parts, that's another good example outside
And
of
that's,
our
and that's a true historic.
area. But
Yeah,
it is.
that's a really
That's
old
probably the original neon.
sign.
It is the
It's very
original
cool.
sign.
Okay, so
All right.
summarize one last time, just so I'm crystal clear. You're okay with internally lit signs on non-designated structures if they don't meet the definition of new construction.
Correct.
And if they do meet the definition of new construction or they are new structures, they're coming to you anyway. And in your current design guidelines, you can limit or prohibit that
That's right.
right now.
Yeah, so keep it status quo.
All right, so
Groovy.
next steps are the code. I will email them out to every committee, every person that has anything to do with Oregon City. Soon, within relatively soon, we have a website, ocsigncode.org. Everything will continue to be posted on there. If you get a lovely postcard in the mail, if you own any property in Oregon City, you will. Call us. We'll tell you more about sign code. We love to hear anybody and everybody's comments. We want to make sure that we have this right, so take a critical eye when you read it. And again, a big thank you to our community advisory team and everyone that has already given us lots of input thus far.
Well, thanks, Laura. Appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
Thank
All right,
for coming.
thank you.
And all your
Yeah.
hard work.
And
Thank you.
before we move on to our goals and policies, I just want to bring up Jonathan Stone real quickly and just introduce him. I don't know if everyone here's had a chance to meet our new Main Street manager. He took over Lloyd Purdy's position this fall, and since you're here, I'll just steal you away. Just introduce yourself and just say what Main Street's up to.
Oh, sure. So Main Street, so they recruited me from Boston, so I'm learning the West Coast. But Main Street, I gave a presentation earlier today, is embarking on sort of a heritage storytelling process. And to hopefully use it in branding downtown, but also creating buzz about our district as a historic place. And so hopefully in the coming weeks, you guys will be beginning to hear about what we're dubbing the First City Story, which is being kicked off with first a branding project, which we're going to completely reimagine or evaluate downtown's brand and sort of marketing positioning. But then also we're doing an essay competition with the high school where high school students are asked to do creative storytelling around the First City Story. Some people call it community engaged. I call it crowdsourcing. But in the end, with the culmination of the First City celebration, we hope that we'll begin to reframe downtown's story, and by extension, Oregon City's story, so that people have a stronger connection to it as a heritage place.
So you're Main Street coordinator. So you have a business on Main Street.
I'm the executive director for Main Street.
So
Oregon
you're
City.
hired.
Yes.
I didn't even know there was such a position. Who
Yeah.
funds that?
It's funded partially through a economic improvement district, So property owners downtown self-elected to
Yeah.
assess a percent of their property value every year.
Where'd the other guy go?
Lloyd is now the economic development director of Tigard.
Oh, I did not know any of this.
But for the
Interesting.
preservationists in you, Main Street as a model is part of the National Trust for Historic Preservation. So somewhere deep inside of us, we're actually preservationists at heart, and so hopefully that'll become a more prominent aspect of our program, especially as we reintroduce the design committee, which will be evaluating projects throughout downtown in terms of beautification, but also preservation and making it a more viable marketplace. So,
Yeah, I didn't know. I mean, I don't know anything about Main Street. I don't know a thing about it, and I just thought it was a volunteer or I had to be a business owner.
Well, there's
Well, there to be on the board. I mean,
There's a board as well.
sure. Yeah.
No, I didn't know. I mean, because we don't get involved in it, so I've never been involved in it. I just drive up and down.
Right. I mean, we're a nonprofit organization. I'm hired as the executive director, and so
Aren't I naive?
it's been. I mean, the board itself has been, the way our bylaws are written, is pretty closely held to downtown.
Yeah.
But our sort of larger committee volunteer structure can certainly reach much broader.
So as the executive director, are you the only employee? I guess you could say.
Hey, there's an office dog.
Sure, it is important work.
So you work for him. Okay. Wow, that's
So
awesome.
you work for the board.
Yes, I have 8 bosses.
Gotcha.
Can I ask you a question?
Yep.
Given that we're talking about downtown and we're just chatting about sign codes, I was curious downtown's opinion of electronic billboards downtown.
I'm not sure I actually know if there's a consensus about it. It's the sign cat. My first day on the job, I essentially flew in from Boston on Saturday and went to a sign cat meeting on Monday. So, like the sort of picking up the curve in terms of making sure that downtown was well understood is. It's more of was in sort of my judgment based upon my interactions with people, but I would say with those kinds of signs you have to be careful. And in the sign cat, I represented that it's while one sign may not seem like Las Vegas, if you imagine if every property owner built to the full extent that they were allowed to in the code. Which isn't likely, but there might be some variation in between. And if a sign is changing every 8 seconds, you can really come up with something that's quite distracting. That being said, I think that those kinds of things have to be extremely carefully considered to be sort of contextually appropriate.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
One thing I was
Very
going to
cool.
ask you is the billboard signs in Oregon City. Is that going to change, or is that going to stay the same?
So the CAT had a recommendation for the existing ones, if they're built legally, they can stay until they're removed by the owner. And they had a split decision on allowing new billboards. We know that our code currently does not allow new billboards. So you'll have to wait and see what city staff recommends.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Wow.
Thanks for
Nice
being
to
here.
meet you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan.
I got educated.
So all of us do.
Yeah.
On your dais, let me go.
This thing.
I have the new version of the draft goals based on our conversation, and I was not able to attach that. So what you had on your agenda was our previous goals. So on your dais are the draft goals for this next 2 years, and I'd like to go through the changes that I made and see if we're missing anything. And if we can't come to consensus, I'd love a vote tonight. And if we can't, give me kind of special direction for next month. But the things that have changed, number 2, apply for a certified local government grant. I had a great conversation with Curry Gill with the SHPO office down in Salem, And we talked a little bit about Denise McGriff's recommendation for the historic homeowner education packets, and those totally fit within the CLG grant. And luckily, I don't have to be very specific when I apply for them, because that's actually due on Friday. And so I'll be very vague, and we can design it later.
You can do that in your free time, too.
Yeah, in my free time.
Yeah.
And then the second one, actually, we were going to do in the last go around, but we ran out of time. And I'd like to do it again because I think it's paid for. I mean, it helps pay for by the grant, but it's working to take the often dry information from the big National Register nomination and put it in a nice 11 by 17 folded colored pamphlet that people can pick up at the library or at the elevator, or I guess for the promenade as well, and they can take with them, that tells the story of these three structures with pretty pictures, and it's a lot more meaningful than a link to a National Register nomination. So that is also what I'd like to propose, and that absolutely is paid for. That basically what we'd do would be working with a graphic artist and taking the nomination and trying to tease out the important parts of the nomination that really is relevant to telling the story of the building, and not necessarily the detailed architectural description of every side of the building.
But you've got to have this in by Friday.
But once again, I can be really vague.
Sure.
So that's my two recommendations. It's not going to be a very big grant for this next year, and we have 2 years to do it. So I'm very comfortable with these two things.
Okay. What else?
Number 3 is update the board on the status of last grant. This will hopefully be taken out very soon. We should be listed within the next 2 months. I wanted to let you know that the owners of the Masonic building are getting a little cold feet. May not list their building as part of this process. So
That's what they've been fixing that up, though, right?
yeah, so we are continually working with them, but that may be a reality. So I just wanted to let you know.
What's the cause? Why are they anxious about it?
Anxious about regulatory burdens and over the potential 20% historic tax credit that they could take advantage if and when the site is rehabbed. So it's that balance.
Yeah.
Let's see. Third, I added this. Or number 4, I added this, and I wanted to just keep you in loop. I talked a little bit about the last month, but I'm working with Chris Dunlap with our GIS on a new interactive map mapping platform, which will be able to get access to all of our survey data. So that is actually really coming from their office, and they're fantastic. And I'm kind of being the lead on that, directing how it looks. But Chris is doing all the hard work. So when this gets posted, realize that it's about 90% Chris and about 10% me. So, but I'm working with Chris on that. 5, we still have a process to go through delisting of those landmarks that had irretrievable loss of integrity in the last go around. It really needs to be. I think it's important to be proactive and just remove those, because I think having properties that have been so irretrievably lost really hurts us when we try to explain why we're protecting the ones that are in good condition, because people look at those and say, I don't understand what a landmark is if you're giving me this broad spectrum. So I think there is a lot of value into it. I just have it to be determined right now, time-wise.
That company that did that survey for us before, can we work off of their data?
Yep. It's more it is. It's a hand-holding process, and it's just timing, getting all the property owners, educating them, creating products to explain why we're doing it, going through a hearings process, creating a staff report. It's just time.
Okay.
6, we're going to keep this on at all times, which is, while we became a Heritage All-Star community last year, the whole goal of being a Heritage All-Star community is to keep in cooperation with all of our other heritage groups, to make sure that we are all trying to be better than the sum of our parts. And I think sometimes in Oregon City, we, like many places, dive into our silos. And so it's just always trying to be collaborative. And so I'll just be always keeping it on how we're being collaborative with all the other heritage groups. And it could be small one year or bigger in the next year, but I think just keeping it as a line item is good. As always, I will try to do best to inform you on the process of the Willamette Falls Legacy Project. Another to be determined is a recommendation from Diana Painter with Painter on how to make changes to our historic resources on our survey and our website. And I'd like to wait until we work on that interactive platform, because some of her issues may go away now that we have a better supportive platform, and we can take some of those out and concentrate on just the historic issues. Also, painter preservation had some recommendations for the code. 10, coordinate with the Ermitinger House restoration efforts. And actually, wanted to let you know we have a great first step. The RFQ for contractors just went into the DJC this Wednesday, the Daily Journal of Commerce, and we'll be working with Clackamas County because we received a community development block grant. And we're looking at first to pre-qualify contractors that they have a background in history of the Secretary of Standards and have worked on previous projects of, I think we had you have to have up to 4 or 5 projects that were on the National Register and met the Secretary of Standards. I mean, you couldn't have just been a one-off, like maybe 3 or 4. You had to show that you've had a lot of experience on that. That RFQ process will go for about the next 2 months, a month. Then it'll move forward with an RFP of those people chosen with requests for qualifications. Qualifications.
Qualifications.
So basically, we're pre-screening the people who are going to turn in a bid.
You send in your veto.
Proposal.
Yeah.
So we're going to pre-screen, and only the people that are pre-screened can turn in their bid. And the goal is actually to start the rehabilitation on the house based on Amaya Fode's and ARG's presentation from last year and their plans this summer. So we're probably with I want to say maybe a November, December completion date. We have a very specific time when we can work on the soil because of the kind of hydrostatic high water table on that tax lot. It's really kind of late July to mid-September of when we want to do excavation work because we're going to be bringing the house up, doing a full basement.
Which house?
The Ermitinger house.
Oh, Ermitinger. Oh.
Putting a full basement in, putting all the HVAC in that full basement and have a storage area, and then put the house down exactly the same level. So
gotcha.
that
Fun job.
excavation part has a very specific timeline of mid-July to mid-September. So
Yeah,
we're just kind of
yeah,
working.
that's
If we go
well
past mid-September, we get too wet. And if we go too
Just
early,
gotta
it's too
slide it
wet.
over
So
and slide
How
it
much
back.
money do we have so far?
We're just straight.
I believe we have
Yeah,
about
slide
$600,000, $700,000
Out of the
of
810.
800. So I think they're doing some value added and some to see
Okay.
not value added, but to see what projects can be laid off. But I think put off to a later time. But I think what they're realizing we need to move forward on the majority of the project, especially the full basement and stabilization.
Cool.
Alrighty.
And then, of course, policy discussions are always there. And based on this summer, I have one entry, which is the compatibility of breezeways in historic districts as a to-do item.
Okay. Alrighty. Well,
Should we come
Thank
back
you.
around to CLGs? Or
Comments on anybody? Anything you want to add or revise on the list?
no? But you said you had to turn that in by
Friday.
Friday, so we should probably make a decision on that today.
Yeah. Oh, if you can make a decision on everything tonight, be great.
So just make a
If
motion.
not,
Make a motion to approve this
or
work.
specifically approve this. Give
Number
direction
2.
for the CLG grant at the minimum.
Well,
I
I
think
think
just
we
what
should
you
do the whole
said.
thing.
Go ahead.
I like the whole thing.
could that grant be pushed towards the Ermitinger House
It's
instead of paper?
it's $5,000 to $10,000.
It's still $10,000.
Kinda gets
Aren't those
lost in
matching
a-
funds?
Kinda gets lost in a
meaning,
pot.
What are you thinking about?
Well, those are matching funds, right?
Yes, so we have up to $10,000 to use to get up to $10,000, though I can't guarantee. But what I'm looking for, the homeowner education packets, probably time and money. Cost, I haven't costed out yet. That's what I'll be doing to now and Friday to start putting all the numbers in. Mailing out probably to all of McLaughlin because we probably would want to reach out to non-designated property owners too to talk about what it means to be in the historic district. That's probably in Kenema, probably about 1,200 things we'll be mailing out. Plus the cost of the paper. It's really more of the cost of the mailing to help pay for the mailing.
Right.
And then the pamphlets, I'm looking at probably about $1,500 to help with that. So it's really like a $30,000 grant we'd be getting $1,500 for, or a $4,000 grant, $4,000 project we get $2,000.
I would leave it the way it is.
So that's kind of
It's not
whereas.
much money.
And the other thing with which we could do if we wanted the remainder, let's say it was a $5,000 to $15,000, we could use the remainder of our $5,000 and get that 10,000 potentially for the Ermitinger for a total of 50. If I'm kind of saying we could get up to 20,000, I'd like to keep this kind of $3,000 to $4,000 to $5,000 project, and do we use the rest to help pay for specific items on the Ermitinger House, which is eligible for the CLG because it's a National Register property.
You do
Exactly. And I think the CLG is a better use of funds, or excuse me, the Ermitinger House is a better use of funds than the mailing. It's kind of fun. And if
The
we
what?
can get matching. The Ermitinger House is a better use of funds than the mailing. And everything else that goes along with it.
How
That
would
was
we
my
use
thought.
it for the Urban house? Just
Well,
what
we've
would
got-
we do?
Well, we've got an $800,000 renovation that has to happen, and there's $600,000 in that budget. So there's obviously a large gap.
So
So
the-
we have a whole list of things we could pick.
Yeah.
So
It would
this
just
money
be a-
could be applied to capital kinds of.
It can't
capital?
only if it's National Register projects.
Okay.
Yes.
So this is one of
Which
the
it is.
few
But this
times
requires
where
I
it
didn't
can.
realize. I thought it had to be publication,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Often,
sorry.
oftentimes CLG grants don't do this because it's very rare to have a National Register property and a project, and as a
project.
city you want to use your finite amount of money, and usually it's very small. And so there's just a reason usually it comes back to
Yeah.
planning, but this is a case. I still think I'm supportive of home education packets regardless.
So do you have the matching funds already set aside?
We have $5,000 a year in this biennium, so for a total of $10,000
As
and
matching funds?
matching funds. So we can get up to $10,000 more
So we get to
through
20
CLG
grand
for
altogether.
20 grand. We don't have to use that. We
Right.
basically it's a 50. What we put up, we can get a 50-50 match for.
Well, then let's do both.
For that.
And it sounds like we have sufficient revenue to do the things that he's talking about and to do your publication and information distribution.
Can I ask about those information packets? Do we utilize real estate agents with
I can tell
giving
you
them that kind of information?
I can tell you it's very hard being in the Portland metropolitan region. It's not like we're in small town Oregon and we have the 4 agents. It's really hard. We really rely on now our property zoning report, which actually people actually use it.
Good.
Yeah, that identifies it's historic. And kind of this new packet that we've been off this year, but we've tried to send new packets once people
When
move
they
in.
first move in.
But I can tell you we've been off this year on that.
Well,
We've
can
been-
I say
yeah.
we need to move this along
Yeah.
so we
Okay.
can
Oh, yeah.
resolve this and break for eating? And
Good idea.
Well, since I need to be Friday, I just need kind of unfortunately, a show
Are we
of
gonna
hands.
vote on this tonight?
Or
We need to.
What are we
Yeah.
voting on? That's
I need a show of hands on the CLG direction,
yeah.
or just a motion and a.
what do you suggest? That's fine, half and half. Kind of, do what you're thinking, and the rest can go.
And I can take the scope and find the very specific ones that SHPA would like the most of all the projects, and say that we're paying for these
Yeah,
product
and
items.
then
And
we
we
know
did
that-
that
Go
2
down the
years
checklist.
ago.
Then the
Heritage
HRB
grant- we had a heritage grant
names
that
to
paid
those
for the
things.
doors.
Yeah.
They re-stripped all the doors and redid it. So we got to find I'll just ask my FODI to find what's the comparable
Right.
$15,000 product that, is just like a checkbox for SHPA because it so obviously meets the whatever requirement they're doing because we have enough. That would not say that we're paying for the thing that doesn't necessarily meet it.
Okay.
So I move that we move forward with both projects pending your recommendations for specific funding levels for both of the projects for the CLG.
Second.
Okay, let's have a vote.
Okay. Mr. Metzen.
No.
All right. Mr. Stewart.
Yes.
Mr. Trevor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Cindy Toll.
Yes.
Okay.
All right,
Sorry,
let's
Derek.
let's break.
Okay, let's eat.
It's okay.
Okay.
I must comply with applicable provisions contained in the City of Oregon City Comprehensive Plan. Generally, unless otherwise noted, if a request is found to be consistent with the municipal code, it is considered consistent with the comprehensive plan. If you wish to participate in this hearing, including challenges for bias or conflict of interest, you must complete the sign-in form located somewhere over there and deliver it to staff. Please do so immediately. The chair will only recognize those who have submitted complete forms. Testimony will be taken in the following order: applicant, testimony in favor, testimony in opposition, rebuttal by applicant. When recognized by the chair, please come forward to the podium, give your name, address, and make your statement. All testimony, arguments, and evidence presented regarding this request must be directed toward the applicable criteria or other criteria in the plan or land use regulation which the person believes to apply to the decision. Please address only the applicable criteria for the decision. Please do not repeat testimony. If you wish, you may choose merely to agree with the previous speaker's statements. An issue which may be the basis for an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals shall be raised not later than the close of the record at or following the final evidentiary hearing. Such issues shall be raised and accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the Commission and the parties an adequate opportunity to respond to each issue. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision makers and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes repeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Failure of persons to participate in the public hearing, either orally or in writing, precludes that person's right of appeal to the City Council or LUBA. Written testimony submitted prior to the hearing constitutes participation in the hearing. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues related to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the decision maker to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Prior to the conclusion of the initial evidentiary hearing, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional evidence, arguments, or testimony regarding the application. The Commission shall grant such request by continuing the public hearing pursuant to the standards contained in ORS 197.763. Do any of the board members have a conflict of interest or ex parte contact regarding this application?
No.
Who's visited the site? Okay. All right, so we can go ahead and turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Chair McLaughlin. I'm going to run through the PowerPoint this evening and identify kind of the key issues that I saw based on a review of the application and comments from the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association that I think I would like to get concurrence from the board on, and I can kind of break some of these. A lot of the conditions of approval are kind of standard conditions of approval, but there's a few I want to point out as we move forward to try to see if either you concur with staff's recommendation, you want to modify, or you want to remove it. So to start off, this is a property for new construction, the McLaughlin Conservation District. See the tax lot is identified in yellow. This is at the very end of Madison Street. Doesn't have an address right now. In Oregon City, you don't get addresses until you receive a building permit, so I identified it by its tax lot. It is at the base of Waterboard Park. Yeah. Let's see.
Is Renee in? I don't know if Renee's...
I don't see his head.
You see him?
There we go.
Better?
Hold on.
That back, yeah. There.
How's that? That's okay. We can all see each other. Maybe we don't want to see each other.
Just a second. We'll find that magic space in between darkness and
The happy place.
the happy place. There is a pre-designated happy place.
No, Renee.
Here it comes. Here it comes.
Hey.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Thank you, Renee.
Thanks, Renee.
All right, so a lot easier to see. This tax lot is at the very terminus of Madison Street. The applicant is proposing a new infill and new construction, and because of the unique location of the lot, it's kind of really sees as at the terminus of Madison Street. It goes into into a driveway with a garage in the basement of the house. So a side entry garage is being proposed. We're looking at the front elevation. The applicant has chosen a bungalow style. This is the second iteration. In the packet, there was some original drawings, and these are the revised drawings based on conversations with the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association. So these are the ones I put in the staff report and also in this presentation. There is the rear elevation. The applicant is proposing this rear deck that pushes out, and I'll talk a little bit about it based on its location. The applicant was proposing a historic preservation incentive to allow the house to be pushed farther back to keep it away kind of from the front of the property, which is higher sloped, but that does push into the rear property line, the rear property setback. Covered porches are allowed to go within 5 feet into the rear setback for a 15-foot setback, and they've approved more than that. I think there was a little miscommunication with myself and the applicant. If they want to move forward with that preservation incentives, they can, but we do need to renotice it for the March meeting. We have done that before, so we will just go through a new notice process. My goal is tonight is to, if they want to go through that, is to have any additional direction or resolution on the other items. So when they come back in March, they fully know what the 1 or 2 things they're looking at. So that's kind of really my goal tonight. The applicant also can choose to reduce the rear porch to stay within the 15-foot setback or remove it. So that is another option as well. And I'll kind of let the applicant give the direction on that as we move forward today. Here's the side elevation closest to Waterbird Park. And here's the elevation you see next to the driveway. So you'd be coming from Madison and coming down into the driveway here. This shows the existing condition of the site. This is the end of Madison, and we go down here to the new driveway, and the house would be about right in this area. Fair amount of blackberries is on the site right now. I guess fair amount is a good word. So once again, I identified this historic preservation incentive that will need to be determined tonight. Really, there's 2 paths I see. One, moving forward with that renotice for the March meeting, or 2, being okay with the condition of approval that either removes or reduces it to stay within the underlying zone setbacks. Some of the items that I wanted to talk about, I have some of the proposed conditions of approval here we can go back to, but the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association brought up concern about the porch detailing in the rear, so I want to go back to that. Not having enough information on that. Usually we look at, especially the ground floor, we look at, how is that wrapped, what's the detailing, as well as the detailing of the railings. So looking from direction of the board on there. The applicant looks like they propose a sliding glass door. We traditionally have a condition of approval that those are French doors on the rear, so that's included in the conditions of approval. The other item, we have these kind of large, oversized divided light windows. We do have a general recommendation that any divided light windows will have exterior mullions that are so with a reveal, so it's not an internal. So the applicant needs to decide if that's what they want to do. Now, for the 1/1 windows, that may be fine, but some of these larger windows, that's a very large expanse if they choose not to go with a true mullion, not a true mullion, but an exterior mullion. So I want to get direction from the applicant and the board about your recommendations for those windows. So I think if they go into and they're not divided, if they're too big, they're pretty big to begin with, but knowing that they may have that kind of divided light with a mullion, it may be able to break that up. So I wanted to get direction on that issue. Let's see. The neighborhood association also had a concern about the pitch of the roof being 912. Generally, bungalows are more kind of usually a little bit lower, though 912 is kind of at the top end of bungalows. Usually they're more 6 or 7. So I do have a condition of approval to have the applicant move to have a reduced roof pitch. So I wanted to get the direction from the board on that, because I think that item is clearly something that the neighborhood is concerned about. But on the staff level, I am uncomfortable creating a specific condition of approval, not knowing what the resulting building looks like, unless I'm getting direction from the board that they're comfortable with that. So that's kind of one thing I want the board to look at tonight. And I think those are the big ones. The additional conditions of approval are more of your traditional ones that you normally see in our land use application packet. This project, as well as the next land use application you'll see tonight, are both in our geologic hazard zone. So I want to take a moment to briefly talk about how this historic review board process and the geologic hazards process work. Because the historic review board is targeted with a very thin authority to review things based on historic review criteria set forth in 1740, you have kind of like I call it like really aesthetic blinders on. You're looking at the aesthetics of the outside of the house. What the Historic Review Board approval is not a development review. So any home that goes to the Historic Review Board gets approved for the aesthetics, but then they go to the City of Oregon City to apply for, in some cases, the building permit or site plan and design review. It's a commercial building. They go through the development review process. There are other overlays, such as natural resource overlay or or geologic hazards that have additional development review criteria. Those are bound into either a type 2 or a type 3 process, either a staff level, like site plan design review, or it's based on what the applicant is asking for. They need to go in front of the Planning Commission, where they have the authority to look at that part of the code. So when you have a historic review application that's also a geologic hazard, the burden really is on the applicant to kind of keep an eye on both of these processes. They know the requirements of the historic overlay, but they also know that they need to go through this geologic hazard review. And in such way, if the geologic hazard review requires additional retaining walls, or the building to be removed, or the height of the building change, or additional grading to be done, that at the end of the day creates a different product than what the Historic Review Board approved, they have to come back to the Historic Review Board and request a modification to that approval. And that's just the bifurcated system we have, because you are not geotechnical specialists. And geotechnical specialists are not historically sensitive. So the applicant really needs to kind of be keeping tabs on both of these processes, and they are doing that. So in many cases, what they like to do is go in front of the Historic Review Board first to get an understanding of the final building envelope that they're going to be approved under, and some of the final look of the building. Then they've already worked with the geotechnical, but then they come in and apply for the official geotechnical review, because they think they've got a handle on what they need. If there are additional conditions that change that, they will come back to our Historic Review Board, who can say that additional retaining wall makes sense and you've mitigated it this way, or you've just created this massive mitigation which totally overtakes this and is not appropriate, and we can't think of a mitigation measure that would address it. So I'm kind of calling the polemics of those two answers. But so tonight, really, you are just looking at 1740. If in this case or in the others, if there are geotechnical concerns, they will need to address those through the geotechnical process. So I just wanted to kind of let you understand how this piece of the puzzle fits in to a general development review. So at this time, I'm open for questions from the board about my recommendations.
Can you go to your recommendations?
Yeah.
Because you've got 1 and 2 and 4 or 5 and 6 are identical. So we'd have to eliminate
Yeah, something's got to go.
those two.
What is this?
1 and 2
Mm-hmm.
They're the
are
same as
5 and 6.
6.
So line items
gosh.
5 and 6 we need to eliminate.
You're right. I
Create
apologize. Happens when
line
you write a staff
7.
report.
Line 7 should
Yeah.
be line 5.
That can be done. So back to the, we can wait. Wait for the comments, but any questions you have before we move forward with the applicant and the public comment, and I can go back and show.
I have brought along the general design principles and some specifics on compatibility style, and would it be okay for me to share it with the panel?
You can ask probably questions right now. I'm thinking that may be better for the
after we
at the deliberation. But if you have any questions on my end,
Does anybody have questions for staff?
About is this specifically related to the bungalow design? Because those are available on
Yes.
page 11 of your
Yeah.
staff report.
Yeah.
If you have any specific questions for me at this time.
I do not.
Okay. No.
Okay, and I'm happy to come back during deliberations.
Okay. Well, let's. So everyone knows we don't have a shot clock. So the applicant has how much time?
The applicant has 15 minutes.
15 minutes.
Right. Oh, we don't have that on anymore.
No.
And public comments limited to 3, and neighbor associations do also get 15 minutes.
But nobody has to take all of it.
No one has to take all of it.
Okay, so we're gonna.
And I have my phone. I'm happy to time.
Yeah, if you want to do it or motion to me or
You have a
something like
clock
that,
on that
because
phone,
we're
don't
gonna. Yeah, but we're gonna stick pretty tightly to it. So if the applicant can come forward, state your name and your address.
Raymond Bell, 6400 Southeast Lake Road, Suite 200, Portland, Oregon 97222. File's quite large.
Go ahead. Yeah.
You're already.
Yeah, all right. So we have spent a lot of time on this, putting the geotech report along with a historic design, following historic design guidelines, and we feel that we've come up with a design that takes helps mitigate both the historic and the geotech issues. The biggest thing that we're going to I'm going to look through is the conclusions and recommendations that came through, and we try to take these one by one in the last couple of days, and come up with some additional items to provide to the board. Some of them are fairly easy. The number one about the pressure treated wood is easily done with a wrapped cedar around all the PT, the pressure treated that's on the deck, and so on. I've done some detail on the back deck. It shows we didn't put the cedar wrap on there, but that's an easy remedy if that's.
Can you hand
Something
it
we
to
can hand.
Christine, or do you have
You have
copies
copies?
of that
Yeah, absolutely.
that we could have?
I'm going to enter this as Exhibit 1, and I'll make photocopies.
Oh, Christina needs one. Give one to her.
Is that the same one?
Yeah.
The proposal on that is just to provide detail to the handrail, which is probably one of the most important items, other than wrapping the pressure-treated material,
So it's
which
just cedar on the outside of the PT.
we try
That's
to
the PT,
note some balusters that aren't just the square type; they're chamfered
Two cedar.
to provide some type of detail to the railing.
So it just closes it in.
In addition to that, on the front, we have more of a picture on the front
Nailing blocks.
for the railing there.
Right.
And we're going to, again, any pressure-treated materials easily
Yeah.
covered there.
Yeah.
And this will be Exhibit 2.
Do. Thank you.
That's okay.
The detail on that front porch, you can see, goes hand in hand with the front door, the wrapped columns, the recessed wrapped columns, and each picket is wider than a normal 1.5 inches. It's a 2.5 that has a recess within the picket. It's one that we actually pulled off a historic front porch railing guidelines, and it was just one that we kind of fell in love with. So again, if there's any questions, you can ask me about that. But the PT on the front porch, again, we'll be painting everything as you see on that photo, that colored photo.
The color is the same.
Well, that I haven't honestly come up with a color on the
I
house
was
yet.
just
We've been working
curious.
on it.
Yeah. So
But-
so you'll have a handrail down the steps.
We don't specifically want to put a handrail down the steps. We feel that the elevation on this house will provide only 3 steps to the ground.
3. Okay.
Yeah, which doesn't require a handrail.
Because you've
'cause
got
it looks like you have more.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 risers on there, 4 treads.
You're looking at we've revised that too. We're looking at the elevations.
Yeah. So you're
which-
thinking it's less than that, so you don't
Yeah,
need a handrail. Gotcha.
yeah. It's more of a grading issue once we get to that point. So we've are looking at.
Revised elevations. We
I
can
do
have that.
on the front, and I'll get to that in a second here. Let's see here. The right-of-way permit is pretty self-explanatory. I've talked to John Knapp with the city of Oregon City on that. The fiberglass windows, the Marvin Integrity, we've already taken a look at those windows as well as potentially Anderson, but I think we'll be going with the Integrity windows as we provided a detail of those previously. And then we made our changes on the siding as well for a tighter reveal. We had it proposed at 6 inches before. We have it set up at 4.5 on that drawing that's up there now. And then as well as the shakes up above on the upper, we go into a straight edge, which is just more of a purchase, the proper material. It's the same material, hardy material, but it's a straight edge product. I tried to Google some lighting compatibility to this to a bungalow architecture, and I really honestly didn't come up with anything. On our front porch, our plan is to put a couple recessed cans across the porch so you don't really see any lighting. My personal preference is not to put any lights on the wall itself, but I can take comments there. So.
I think it was more that if lighting is proposed, that it is appropriate for the bungalow architecture rather than vernacular, or colonial, or
Right.
Queen Anne.
Yeah, I'd rather just hide the lighting than provide, because the porch is a perfect recessed up. It's a perfect way to light that porch. I'm going to skip over the pitch issue right now, which is 8B, and go into 8C with its rear sliding glass doors. You want, mention the French doors, which I understand that. Our initial idea of putting in sliding doors is that dining room isn't that large, and having doors swing into the dining room becomes.
But you can get
cumbersome.
French sliding doors.
Yes, you
That
can.
have the French reveal, so
Correct.
that would be the solution. It has the same look as French doors.
Right, that's what I was going to mention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we
Now,
can
as
make that a
proving-
condition if we had to.
French reveal.
Yeah, French reveal. That's right. Okay.
And then the back windows on this house. Can I switch? How do I switch? it?
Yeah, you just use the right and left buttons. You see the arrow buttons? You'll want it to go, yeah.
There you go.
Just keep going, yeah.
Those back porch windows are actually a double paired windows that are molded together. It's not one big window. So
Right.
It has a molding down the middle now.
Are all of these that way on the back?
They
You've
are.
got 'em, yeah.
Yeah, they're all molded, so double windows. Even the one on the bay is the same way. It's a double molded window. We propose that because potentially the view, as we're sitting up higher, looking over the neighbor's house from behind. There are options of splitting those windows and putting, a header in between, a couple 2x, and then trimming it all out that way and just separating the windows. It would pull them closer to the corner. They're 2.5 foot wide windows, so they're not large windows to begin with, and individually.
How do they open? Up the bottom?
Yeah.
Single
Just
hungs.
Single hungs, yeah. Same with the window to the, from my view, the left side. It's a pair of double, single hung windows. And again, those could be separated as well. So I'll take recommendations on that.
Okay. So in reading, from the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association and the suggestions there, some of them were, but can we talk about the pitch?
Oh, yeah. I wanted to get to that because that's kind of my main
Gotcha.
issue, definitely.
Got it.
The pitch itself, this design on this house is totally dependent upon the 912 for things to plane. I've taken and redrew this at a 712, and what it does is it stretches the length of the house by 12 feet, 6 feet off the back and 6 feet off the front. So not only are we, the idea of dropping that roof line or whatever to make it look not so massive only increases the size of the house itself. So the 912 is dependent on it. The dormer on the front isn't per se, because it could be any pitch, and I've redrawn that at a 6, so you can kind of see what that looks like. And I got this display here for
That'll
that.
be Exhibit 3.
What I've also done is, when we started this design, there was a house that we had driven by and said, well, that's the design that we're looking for. And it's just around the corner. It's over 2nd Street, and well, it's down the hill about 3 streets. And I've taken photos of that house as well as 2 or 3 others within a block of this specific home that we took our design from. And they all have steep roof pitches, and they're all bungalow styles. Even within this pamphlet that shows, it has a description on page 11 of a bungalow, that very house on the top has a steep roof pitch. It's nowhere near a 6. So my argument is to keep the 9, just for the simple fact that there's many homes, and honestly, I spent 5 minutes taking these 4 photos, which I'll provide as well, that show the same design with the same roof pitches.
So you need about 4 minutes left.
I only have one time to take all of those. So.
That'll be
gotcha.
exhibit 4.
That first one is the one we took our design from. Ideas.
Gotcha.
Yep.
I know that the one of the comments that I read was the home next door. The size of it is fairly small, and you know, I think it probably one of the smaller homes in the neighborhood, and unfortunately, I'm right next to it. But one of the comments that were within those notes was that generally, when new construction comes in, it spurs the neighborhood to upgrade or add on, and you know, potentially maybe that individual there, since his house is fairly small and he's got room to add. You know, it's just, you never know. But yeah, I do understand that the house would overpower his to some degree.
No.
But I don't know what else to do other than.
I was going to add those. Okay.
Okay.
And I will send that to the Neighbors Association. Right
Oh.
away then.
Okay.
Take comments on the pitch.
There you go. So that the front gable, you've got a roof within the roof, going back on a 512 off that 912.
Correct. Yeah, it was kind of the old idea where you used to be able to walk out to a porch area that had railing on the front, but that window isn't accessible or to even be a door.
Gotcha. Does anybody have any questions for the applicant? No. How do you feel with knee braces on the sides? I mean, historically, a story-and-a-half bungalow would have knee braces on either side.
Yeah, I'm you know, those in all reality are fairly inexpensive to put on.
Yeah.
I mean, we generally build them out of stuff that's sitting around the, you know, in the scrap pile. So.
Well, but what's your eave overhang on the sides?
Well, right now we're looking at 18 inches on the front, and then we were thinking possibly doing. I don't specifically like 18 inches out, but at least 12 to 16 inches.
Yeah, 18's a good thing. And then what's your thought on the columns out front?
I talked with Denise, and she mentioned we needed to make them more massive, and she gave me an idea of a couple ideas, and one of them she mentioned was a tapered idea, and I'm not a big tapered. I mean, I've done so many of them over the last 15 years that
Well,
I'm
they're
almost sick
harder
of
to
them.
do. That's why you're not a fan of them.
Well, that and that I've just seen so many of them, but
You've seen them just because they're more historic.
yeah, well, even on just the simple craftsman homes too.
Simple ones do, but most of them do have it. A lot of them have a tapered one on the more.
I mean, it's not
but
the
I
end.
hear you.
It's not the end of the world to
No.
me either way. I prefer. This is going to be my personal home, so just so you know, I prefer square columns. So
You know, typically on a front dormer or a shed dormer or a gable dormer, there'd be a series of windows.
correct. That's Denise mentioned that.
Yeah, I mean, if you looked at any of them, they typically will have 3 or 4 smaller windows on the front. Just that's kind of a character thing. It's part of it. Would you be opposed to that?
Not at
No.
all. No, I
What's
saw it
that
on
front-
that one photo. Has it like that?
Yeah. What's that front room? This dormer? What is that?
It just goes into a 2-story entry.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, so it's.
Got it. Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. So we've got testimonies here. Raymond, you just went. Don and Dominic Baker, if you could come forward and state your name and address, and we'll give you 3 minutes. But I don't know what whether you're in favor or not in favor. It's just, here you go. So state your name and address, and we'll keep track.
Dawn Baker,
Dominic Baker.
115 Madison Street,
Okay?
right next door.
Oh, okay.
It's a little house next door.
The blue house.
Yeah.
Okay. I know where you're at. Okay.
I didn't even think that it was would be dwarfed by it until he mentioned it. Mostly, we're just concerned about the construction. I'm not even sure if this is where we should be, but we're just worried because there's not a lot of room in front of our house where our driveway is. We're just worried about the construction and not perhaps being able to get out of our driveway or in our driveway during the construction.
Oh, you
and
mean
things
during
like that.
construction?
Right.
Yeah, during
Gotcha.
the construction.
'Cause it's very small there. There's not.
There's
lot
not
of
really a
room.
turnaround or anything, so I'm
No.
not sure where they're going to be putting large machinery or their equipment or supplies.
So can I ask you, do you have any issues with the house itself or the aesthetics? The construction part we can't really
Okay.
get into, but we're more the design,
Sure.
the aesthetic, things like that.
Yeah, that's why I said I'm not sure if we're in the right spot.
No,
Where would
but
we
I
go
think
to
we can.
make
I
those
can have a
comments?
conversation with you, and we can coordinate you up with our engineering division and right away. Sometimes it's good just so they know that that's an issue. So when they write the right of way permit, they know that's a pre-existing worry, and that they just make sure that that's kind of written in that the applicant has thought through kind of their construction plans and making sure that property owners are not blocked. So that's absolutely what we can do through the engineering division through the right-of-way permit.
And then also so that people don't walk on our property. When it was up for sale, people were walking on our property to show the property. And we
yeah.
were surprised in our backyard a couple of times because somebody was just walking
Yeah, just some individuals
on our property.
you know.
And we're sitting back there and suddenly there's strangers.
I would recommend talking to the gentleman here. He's
I'm
happy
sure
with us.
the person that's
Yeah.
building it and could stay there for a while would probably want to be a really good neighbor.
Yeah.
So you might want
Yeah.
to. So
Great.
that might be the place to be. But it's nice of you to come and at least we can help you get to the right
Yeah.
place.
I appreciate that. That's
Yeah.
it.
Good.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Denise McGriff, McLaughlin Neighborhood Association. I like your stopwatch, you know. So you start. Yeah. We'll start it when she says her name.
There. Denise McGriff, McLaughlin Neighborhood Association. And I just want to say for the record that it was really terrific being able to sit down and meet with Ray. I brought a big stack of books all about bungalows, and we were flipping back and forth through them, which is where the idea for the window came from. I came across a particular design that was similar to his and said, hey, this is what they did with their dormer window. And he liked it, but he said he could go either way. Just briefly on the new material that that we just took a look at is, I would just recommend that if the posts on the decking, they really should match the posts on the front. Maybe not the same size, but they should be the same. I don't think you'd see a nice solid post and bottom like that with a chamfered post on the back necessarily, not on a bungalow. So I would just say maybe a smaller detail of the same thing, and it doesn't have to be finished out as quite as much, but something that would be symmetrical. So one of the things about bungalows is everything is kind of paired and the same, and so if you have a big window, you have a small window, it's the same dimension. Probably, and I agree with your idea on the French door reveal for the back, because that makes much more sense than having a sliding glass window.
I mean, it could be a slider, but it would have
yes,
a
but
French.
French, yes,
Yeah.
that would be much more appropriate. Probably the biggest thing that I sort of agonized over after I talked to Ray was, and I'm hoping to rely on Derek and you, John, to some degree. What I was really trying to get at with the pitch of the roof is that the dormer needs to be proportional to that, and Ray did draw one up with a shed dormer, which I did see, and it didn't quite work with that, although one of the pictures he took had a nice steep roof with a shed on it.
Shed, yeah.
But he just didn't really like the way it looked, although I thought it was very appropriate, for a bungalow. So I guess one of the things I would ask of both of you is how you would look at that, because that's the part I have a little trouble with. I mean, I can see it, but then trying to figure out the proportion on that with the ratios, that's what I was having a little difficulty with. But I know when I took it, when we talked about it at the steering committee, everybody said it looked a little out of scale. So I was playing with it, trying to make it longer, taller, and I couldn't get it to quite work. So that was just that one particular question. And then you had all the other sort of comments, and he was really open to making some suggestions, and we particularly like the front because now the porch posts are a little more substantial. They don't look like they're little toothpicks trying to hold up that roof. It's, even though they're not in a newer house, they're not necessarily designed that way. They look substantial and they look like they go with that roof, and that's much better. And then just the redesign of the door, and he did have 1/1s on the original drawing that I saw, and he's now put, it looks like 9/1s on the.
That's not even bungalow-esque, though. I mean, it's not a character of bungalow style.
The 9 over.
No, you could have a 4 over. A lot of times you'll see on those bungalow windows that it'd be in the upper part of the window that just goes across.
I'm trying to think if I have casements though, and I think mine are. I think I have 6/1s on my house.
And there's a lot of different ways.
Yeah, but there's a lot of different ways you can do that. So basically, just looking at Christina's findings, I think we would concur with pretty much everything that she said, and I leave it to your best professional judgment on the pitch and the dormer pitch, because you guys have a little more expertise in that particular area than I do. But again, just thanking him for sitting down, and I think, I pulled out that stack of books out of my bag, and he was like, "Oh my God!" But there's lots of different bungalows, and I've collected those over the years from my work at the city, and then just for my own personal information. So it was a little more detailed than what we had in our design guidelines.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
Well, does anybody have any questions before Denise? No.
For the posts, are you thinking compatible or the same front back?
Again, the back deck is a little smaller in scale than the front, so I would think something that would be the same but proportional to the size of that back deck. So, again, you can add a condition and make, a finding that.
Yeah, the only hard part about that is when you're putting something of scale on something that's 9 or 10 feet up, it tends to not look very good, as opposed to in the front where it's almost at ground level. It looks great, but I hear what you're saying about compatibility from the front to back. But when it's up high, it almost looks wrong.
Well, it'd be less work for him than to make a chamfered post.
Yeah,
if he had a square one that was.
And we can
smaller.
Ask, the posts in the back, they could be like 6x6 wraps, something a little thicker, bigger, but simpler.
Simpler, yeah. I think he showed something like that on his original drawings. If you look at the original drawing where the front posts are a little smaller in scale, and that size could work on the back.
Yeah.
As opposed to
it's something simple.
Simple, yeah. Something
just
very simple.
Because it's in the rear.
Yeah. Well, somebody's going to see that from back there. Maybe not the people next door, but down the hill. Down the hill. So, but anyway, so thank you.
Yes, thank you. Ray, do you want to come back and make any comments? Do you want to?
Yeah, one of the things is the grids, the 9/1. I'm perfectly fine with 1/1. I would prefer that. I thought that that was more of the design that rendered to a bungalow. So I'm perfectly fine.
What I was thinking is you could have a single hung or a picture window, and sometimes you'll see the grids up here,
Right.
but that's not like an end all be all. It's just a lot of times you'll see that in a window. As a simple way, that's a little bit more 20s because it's a simpler look as a thought.
Yeah, myself, I don't personally like grids, but I thought that's what would fit the bungalow style. So
But we could easily add a either or condition.
Right. And then, I kind of bloodied this up a bit, but more often than not, a lot of story-and-a-half bungalows most likely have sheds on the front and on the back. And when you talk about the pitch, if you do this, you've got to accommodate. And I don't remember what the floor plan is up there, but a lot of times on a story and a half, what appears to be a really steep pitch is more like maybe a 6 or a 7, because they're very long, they're very big. So the houses are longer, and this is a long house. So oftentimes you'll see those sheds as like coming up the stairs or something like that, just kind of giving some headroom. But you could conceivably drop that pitch, and I'm just talking. You could conceivably drop that pitch to a 7 and create dormers on either side. But I don't know if you're trying to truss this up here to make it simple. Yeah.
cost effective.
Yeah, it's the builder gig. So I get what you're doing. You're trying to elevate just so you can keep things inside the confines of the roof or the truss. So that's a thought. I don't know if anybody else has any other comments on asking you about the pitch. But it's a tall house. But the other thing is, it's a tall house, but it's down low.
And it's not really that visible.
No, so you have to move that fire hydrant, I guess, huh?
Well, Eli Dewberry with the
Yeah.
Public Works, he's going to move that over.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
I was just curious when I pulled up. I was like, well, the city's got to move that.
I had to dig into the general guideline principles about this house. When we went to look at it, there was a lot of homes really close to this house, within 100 yards, that were T11 siding, non-significant in any kind of historical context. So I dug into the general design principles, and what it says is new construction is just that. It is not historic, nor shall it attempt to be historic, but rather to stand side by side with existing historic structures in a respectful manner. And then it also goes on to say, new construction shall complement one of these styles to support the historic context. Use of any other styles dilutes and distracts from the historic contents of the district. And one more thing. While there may be several styles dominant within the district, the specific choice of a style shall be compatible with adjacent properties, the block, and the neighborhood. It also must be fitting for the particular function of the building and its size. In other words, it has to be a livable structure. So my feeling is that this new building has enough elements in it to be compatible with what is standing around it. And it doesn't have to be an authentic 1920s bungalow. I think arguing over pitch and style of dormers and all that stuff is not consequential to the fact that this is a brand new structure.
Sounds like we're moving into deliberations, or is there any?
I just had one other
Okay.
question, but thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Just curious on the side bump out, that bay, where you got the 45. Yeah. You tell me which one's easier to build. I know which one is. If you did a bay like this, or if historically they would have come straight out, like a bump out just straight out,
Box.
like a box,
Box.
and then the window? Or are you trying to get like max out a view thing there?
No, I honestly just drew that way without, just to get more room in the dining room. And
Yeah.
how it's,
More light.
yeah,
Yeah,
and more
okay.
light.
Would you have a strong opposition to squaring that off?
No, not at all.
Because you're coming out how far? Maybe a foot.
2 feet.
You're coming out 2 feet. So if you came out and kept the windows, or even if you came out straight, like because most of the time when you see an older bungalow, they're rarely 45. They're always a box out. If you came straight out with that, you could actually gain a little bit more window. You could widen those windows, or
Right.
divide them just so it has a little bit more character. I mean, would you be opposed to that? No.
No.
I mean,
No,
again, it is a bit aesthetic, but it's also more historic for any type of bungalow. Usually, when they have a bump out, it's kind of a square box.
It just has that shed roof.
Yeah,
It's-
yeah, and it's
Yeah.
easier to build, easier to frame. But anyway, it's
Yeah. I was curious if you'd explain your thoughts on this portion of the roof here, shed versus a
Well, I
dormer.
had drawn it in a shed form, and it just I wasn't getting the look that I was trying to get out of that house. And to me, it made the roof look more massive, because you're looking at a plane now, because a lot of those sheds went from where the wall starts all the way up to the ridge. And so and with that massive roof that comes up already on each side, it just made that roof look ugly, and it made that shed dormer look dumpy and small. And so that's why I reverted back to the gable and maybe just dropping a pitch on it.
And did you come to that conclusion when you were drawing it in elevation or looking at other buildings? Tell me about that process if I do that there.
It's more of an elevation on the board, just sitting there and just playing around with it, kind of the chicken scratch that John did on my drawing there.
I kind of
probably
bloodied.
a little bit better than the chicken scratch, but
yeah.
and just sitting and
It's the
looking
rooster
at it and
scratch.
just trying to maybe make the eaves wider. I drew it with wider eaves. I drew it with I drew it so it didn't make it to the ridge, and it just nothing seemed to look that good to me.
Okay.
I mean, I know that the pictures, there's one of those pictures, those colored photos that I took, has a shed roof on there, and the house looks good that way. I mean, it just, I don't know, I think that this has a lot of roof that needs to be broken, and doing it in a shed there just makes it look too large, the whole roof itself.
Yeah. I'm a shed guy. And then some of these old homes, they might have these vents on the ends, but, if you're going to vent the roof, you don't need them. But, I look at putting in fact, there's a house, I think it was 507 Madison, which is a story and a half with a shed on it, and they've got knee braces on the sides, which is traditional, but then they put the vent on one side or the other of the knee brace. But you don't even, you wouldn't really need one other than if you wanted to vent with a ridge vent or something like that. Unless you
It's
want
more of
it.
an aesthetic thing on the
Yeah.
vents.
Yeah. And, I know the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association, they mentioned that, the windows are off on the sides, but that's kind of historic anyway. My biggest kick was kind of what Derek was talking about, is that shed. I'd be more inclined to say if you could break those into like 3 or 4 windows across there instead of one big one. You just wouldn't see that on a Craftsman. You just wouldn't see a big window. Maybe you'd see it if somebody came in the 70s and did it. But it really needs to be divided windows there, and I would make
And
that.
I'm not opposed to that.
Because that's only talking your entry, right? So that gable's probably, 6-7 feet wide, something like that.
That gable is actually about 12 feet wide.
It's 12 feet wide.
So I think 3 windows, a series of 3 windows would.
Then there should be 4 at a minimum,
Okay.
if it's 12 feet wide, because that will keep the scale down with the smaller window.
Yeah.
Do you have any thought on that?
I agree with that. The and just getting back to the shed, I've never drawn a shed that I liked in elevation. They always look out of proportion. So I understand where you're, and that's why I asked how you came to that conclusion. And I'm looking at your upper floor plan right now. We don't dictate the inside, but I do want to compliment the plan that you came up with. That it does feel like a
I didn't put the end.
a bungalow on the interior, which really helps you to form a bungalow on the exterior. We don't always see that, so I just wanted to compliment you on that. Make sure that was noted.
I think there'd be an issue if this house was dominant at the street level.
It's
But
not.
the thing is, it's down, and a lot of what you're going to see from the street is the roof. So it's not. I mean, that's kind of, I guess, an advantage a little bit.
Yeah, and well, we did that because there's rock in that area, and once we start digging, we wanted
it's
to
sketch.
use the topography to get that house
Yeah,
and basement.
but as
down the
Christina said, once you find out what's going on there, if that changes this thing, we're right back at it.
Yeah.
We did test pits on that, so
Mm.
we know where the rock starts
Gotcha.
and stops and all that. So
Okay.
one thing that we forgot to touch base on was the back porch, getting into that. There are a couple of options. One, I can make it a little bit shorter, and the other is potentially move the house forward to even help out there as well.
Well, so the board can make many decisions tonight. The board can, we can write in that basically says, you get to put your porch at its 15-foot by code limit, and your foundation is at 20 feet. You could allow it to move the whole thing slightly up to accommodate, be that. So it's either smaller porch or move it forward, or come back. We hopefully determine everything but this porch issue, bring it back, and then we revisit the March meeting, and we just kind of just look at the preservation incentive. And I think the key is to make sure you talk to your neighbor behind you. And especially if your neighbor behind you is supportive of it, I think that goes a long way. But if they come up and they're not supportive of it, or there's or they're kind of silent, or they haven't really gotten hold of and reviewed it, I think that's some of the question. Because with the preservation incentive, it's all about allowing the setbacks to be modified to make new construction products more compatible with the area, and working around a giant basalt foundation, or form is definitely a way to work around it, but to make sure it's not to the detriment of the properties around it.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions?
No.
Before I close this? Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
And then-
Thanks to everybody.
Allow anybody else to, new information was added here, so we want to give an opportunity if anybody else.
Does anybody else want to make a comment before I close the meeting?
Please.
Thank you. Denise McGriff, McLaughlin Neighborhood. I just wanted to add something in, not about what you just talked about, but I understand the whole issue with the unstable slopes and the geotechnical report. What I'm finding a little disconcerting, or what's bothering me a little bit, is that I think having the geotech report after the applicant comes here puts them at a little bit of, any applicant, at a disadvantage, because it would be nice to know that information for them up front as they're starting to design the house. And so somehow it would seem to me, if we could figure out a way, and I'm not saying you, but we, city general, that those processes maybe could go in parallel, so that you come down here and then they have a meeting point. And it would help you also have a little more information, even though that's not your purview, but you would have that background and say, oh, well, based on this, we might have to shift this or move this over here, so you'd know that when you're coming to the hearing. So I just think that there ought to be a way that we can solve that little problem.
I think that's by enabling them to do two things at once. It's kind of like being in Vegas. Well, yeah, because I think the way I look at it is we can approve this, but the reality is whether this works where it's at or it doesn't will
yeah.
change things, and they
Right.
know that if it changes things, they got to start this over.
Right. And so that's
So-
what I'm saying. Maybe if they know that before they come to
Oh.
you, it might make it easier. So it's a one.
But that's the
step.
hard part. That's not.
I
We're not
know.
part of that
Yeah.
I know.
process.
I'm just saying that
we've got nothing to do with it.
I know, but maybe that's something, I'm saying for the record, that the Community Development Department director could look at to try to make that
You
process
should
a
be
little.
staring over there.
Yeah.
She's not. She's not the director.
No, I think the crux
I
of
just
the
like looking at you,
problem
John.
is that the geologic hazard is a type 2 process, which means the record is closed. I mean, the record is closed once we notice it. And then we have this process, which is a type 3, which where the record stays open all the way till the moment the board makes a decision. So it's hard in the sense that you don't want to put the applicant in a place where they go through this type 2 process with this closed record, get new information from the Historic Review Board, and then they have to re-notice the record. It just,
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
It gets confusing.
Yes, it is confusing. There ought to be
It's
some
this,
way that they could mesh
like
together.
when the
But-
house is designed, and they know it's going to be on a hill, that's an automatic flag that they should probably get that done.
Yes, thank you.
And-
That was a real succinct way of saying that.
If it gives you any comfort, by the time they get to this point, he has a pretty good idea of what's there and what will work. It's a matter of getting final design recommendations
It's just
that are
a
very
blessing.
specific to this site.
Yeah, if he's
Okay.
done his due diligence, he's
Yeah.
like you said, he knows what's going to happen, how this is going to work. So
So that hasn't happened, though, the notice for the,
No,
Okay.
we're just completing
I mean,
it.
now,
You
okay.
should be noticed very soon.
okay, so we'll be
Yeah.
seeing something. Okay, sounds good. Well, thank
thank
you.
you. All right.
Trying to make it easier for people who are coming before
Yeah.
you guys.
It's been the biggest conundrum having this bifurcated
government.
No, this is better. This is better.
Okay.
Doesn't have to
Well,
be that
so
way.
so then we're done with that. I'm going to close the public
Sure.
hearing.
If I could kind
Oh.
of, I've been writing notes down about all the different items that were brought up
But
tonight.
can I close the meeting?
Yes, absolutely. Close the
Okay.
he- the
So I'm going to
record.
close the public hearing right now. So it's just us.
So here are all the notes I've taken on potential additions or revisions.
Before you do that,
Mhm.
I need to get on the screen the findings, the stuff at the end.
I know, exactly.
Yeah, it's Funky Town.
I was gonna try
Yeah,
to fill
thank
it
you.
with
And then there's also
Break it.
the second.
Yeah. Okay.
So why don't we just do this right now? Oops. Oh.
It's all right. Time to go home. Can't do anything.
The magic
Of the delete
technology.
button.
Yeah. There you go. Thank you.
So these are some of the issues I've heard tonight. Still, we can actually, we need to figure out from the applicant what they want to do. If they want to move forward with the preservation incentive, we will do that. Though I think a strong recommendation that a porch reduction or porch moving to meet the 15, but we need to look at that tonight. So here are some of the additional design that I was seeing, and please let me know if I missed something. We have a section, and I'm kind of seeing this under 8. We can add to these items under the prior to building submittal. These are the kind of revision sections. 1, the applicant shall redesign the rear deck to be compatible but simpler in design from the front deck. We have the applicant shall include knee braces, and I didn't get where on specifically
I was saying on either side.
of the
Either
main
side
elevation.
Yeah, the
Not
left
the
and right,
dormer.
the right, left and right side, and
Being north and south.
the dormer, and the dormer.
Okay.
I'd like to say how far those eaves should come out, but I don't know if I can.
Why not?
Well, I think they should come out at least.
18 inches?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, and then I have
Okay.
There you go.
the applicant shall redesign the bay bump out to be a square bump out on the side elevation.
Yes.
They have the applicant shall break the windows on the front dormer into 4 smaller divided light windows.
Yeah.
And
I
specific.
think we said a minimum of 4.
minimum
Minimum
of 4.
It's 12 feet wide.
Okay. And I also am remiss, I did not add an issue relating to the garage door, and I want to come back. The applicant, we usually recommend a 2-car garage door. when we have a detached garage. So not knowing the size, one thing to look at, this is built, so one recommendation is if we go with the full garage door, we can make a requirement that they kind of put the added-on elements that make it look like a smaller carriage garage. Like you can look at it so it looks like a carriage garage door with a handle, and those are add-ons.
Like the hinges.
Yeah, the hinges and the add-ons.
And then windows.
It adds more elements. It's give or take, but I think the key is if this is allowed, I think the board needs to make a finding why in this case it's appropriate, because there's a lot of other cases, cases where a two-car garage door would not be appropriate.
Right,
Sure.
but you're saying that, and I hear what you're saying, but I think in this case, because of the way the turnout is and the way it's positioned, that getting in and out.
Right,
having
and then
it
the
wider.
size of since it's a side entry
don't know what
garage
size
door,
that is.
rather than a rear entry. I mean, we've had other new construction garage door. I mean, garages on the basement have two separate ones before. They had a lot easier turning radius, so it was
This is
easier.
tight.
And this is very tight. So I mean, I think the board needs to make findings tonight, either why you're allowing it, and then why if you want to condition those extra bracketed elements that break it up.
Well, if somebody wants to say something otherwise, I think because it's subjugated, it's not on the main level, it's down low, it's in the back, it's not immediately visible. It may be, but I think probably because the tight turning, I think to soften that would be adding the fake hinges and the handles. Unless someone, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, that sounds right.
I agree with that.
So we can add that.
So I have that as an additional condition, as the applicant shall provide additional elements in the two-car garage doors to break it up to look like two one-car garage doors, such as hinges and
Yeah.
handles. Okay.
What material is that garage door? Do you know?
We've generally allowed fiberglass and wood.
Was it specified?
I don't think it was specified. So if we want to talk more, we can open up the record.
Fiberglass, wood, or metal?
We haven't generally allowed metal.
Have or
Have not
Okay.
as the
Okay.
default. So it's fiberglass or wood.
Those kinds of carriage doors.
We could ask the builder.
I guess we'd have to bring it
Unless
back
we
up
open
here.
up-
Well, unless if you're
Sorry.
happy with that condition, we have generally not. So I mean, on my end, when we go to metal, I've always
We are not going to metal.
Okay, what I've said to applicants is that is a material that is not kind of an automatic approval, and it's up to an applicant to provide an alternative material presentation on why they want to use that specific material. I haven't seen that tonight, so.
Okay. The other thing was that was made mention, the shingles, they need to be
Straight.
straight.
And that's it's already in here.
It's in the,
Yeah, he could.
Yeah, under 7.
Oh,
Straight edge
cement.
cement board shingles and shakes wave shingles are not represented in the district.
We don't have,
Here, I'm gonna go back.
yeah.
there it is.
Oh, there it is.
Yep.
5 or subset 3.
And he has a minimum 4-inch, but he's proposed. I have condition 4, but he has a 4.5. So I'm happy to change to 4.5-inch reveal just to match what
Yeah.
the applicant has proposed. As you reduced it down,
Sure.
I think 4.5 is fine
Yeah.
for bungalow.
Smooth.
On my end, for any, if he moves forward to do any porch lighting, I'm happy on a staff level to do that. This is a bungalow. That's not a bungalow.
Yeah.
Porch
Okay.
lighting.
Yep.
I play that's Colonial Revival, that's not bungalow game a lot. So that's kind of the recommendation. So I'm really right now looking for 2 things from the board about the preservation incentive. Maybe we can ask the applicant if they want to move forward with that to continue to the hearing for next month. And then secondly, I'd like to have some little additional findings from the board for these additional conditions of approval. We're working forward as when some of these additional conditions are added the night of the hearing, that we can kind of explain why the Historic Review Board made that, and it can really just be a couple sentences of why we believe adding these additional features. It doesn't have to be each one, but I'd like to be able, when I do my notice of decisions, to kind of explain that the board added these additional conditions.
Generally,
this-
these added these conditions to enhance the compatibility of the style for the home.
The type of
And
home.
for the type of home, the style, and for the neighborhood, I guess. something like that.
Yeah.
Anybody have anything else they want to add for the findings for
Let's
that?
keep it simple.
Well, I think
That's
this.
what my attorneys tell me.
I think the site plays into it too.
Mm-hmm.
This house would not be allowed on a flat site, given that we would not allow a garage.
No, it'd be
cut in this.
detached, and it
Exactly.
would be an issue.
So the topography definitely plays a role in making a unique form.
Yeah. The preservation incentive, there's already been intimation that a house can be moved forward or back or shrunk.
Well, we can let the applicant speak what they want to do if they're ready
So
to
I've
move
gotta
forward
open
for a
this back
decision
up.
tonight.
Well,
So-
I think he said he was fine with shrinking and removing the house.
That's what I'm saying. That was, he
That's what he
intimated that that would be flexible.
Yeah.
I just want, if it sounds like we're ready to make a decision tonight, if he doesn't want to do this preservation incentive, so I just want to allow him the opportunity. Or allow
Because
to
we would
move
make
it.
that as a condition is,
Right, well, if we's going to continue it, I'll take all this and we'll continue it to next month. We'll renotice it with the preservation incentive.
and
And then
Just-
you'll adopt the whole thing in March.
Whole package.
yeah.
If he doesn't want to do that, and he will either move the building up or reduce it, then we can just make the decision
And we
tonight.
can do it tonight.
Yeah, so it's
Either
really,
tonight or
it's
next
really up
month.
to the applicant.
Yeah, you know, that we'll just work to make the 15 feet setback.
So part
Whether
of
it's
our
a
condition
reduction
will
of
be
the deck and
moving the house forward or reduction of the deck to stay within the setbacks.
So are you reopening the hearing because he's talking?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think I kind of said we needed to reopen, but I just closed it.
But
No, it's new information,
It's
so.
new information, so it's back open. If someone wants to comment on that.
No, I don't. I just want to give her a note about the garage doors so that you don't have to go further.
Okay,
Another
so,
round.
so it's officially closed.
Okay.
So can you put that as another condition?
Yes, so I will basically revise condition of approval number, I was going to add a new condition of approval is that the applicant shall either reduce the length of the porch to fit within the.
Or shift the house
Or
forward.
shift the house forward.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
So where do we do
Okay.
stand? Do
And
consent?
I added additional findings relating, and I think you did confer to that, but the garage door specifically relating to the vehicle ingress and egress and turning radius being really specific to the double car garage, and it's site specific and topographic.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Does someone wish to make a motion on those conditions that were just stated by staff?
so moved.
Second? Somebody want to second that?
Well, I will move to approve the conditions as stated by staff.
Okay, and do we have a second?
Second.
Second, okay, can we call for a vote?
Yes, Bob Seward.
Aye.
Cindy Toll.
Aye.
Derek Metzen.
Aye.
Chair McLaughlin.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, so that's done. Thank you very much, and all I would
Thank you.
suggest
Right.
is be good neighbors. Because be good neighbors to your new neighbors.
We could take a 5-minute break just to get.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're going to take a 5-minute break, and then we'll hit it up with the next one.
Can I have an ex parte conversation now?
Staff for,
Right.
this is HR 1402.
Yes. Thank you, Chair McLaughlin. We have another application this evening, HR 1402, which is a proposal of new construction in the Kenema National Register District. And I want to kind of go through a little bit of the proposal and some of the outstanding issues I see and kind of some of the direction I'm looking for the board tonight. And then we'll kind of move on. So this is a new single-family residence. It's about a 2,460 square foot new construction, but more specifically, what I find great is actually I'll give you some numbers and then I'm going to go back. It's 26 feet wide with a 10-foot side addition, and that's pulled back 10 feet from the front of the house, and the length of the house is 46 feet. So the kind of traditional volume is a 26 by 46 with a this 10-foot side addition. Okay, here's the location of the house on the site. These were the previous homes, property that was owned by Wilson Construction. They came in with, oh, actually, you know what? You have not read your land use yet, so I'm going to peel back a second.
I saw the sign there and said Wilson.
I know, but you need to read your land use.
I do?
Yeah, again.
Really? Did new people come?
Is anybody new that was not here at the new?
Was there anybody here that wasn't here at the 7 o'clock hour when I read the thingamajig? You weren't here?
You don't have to hear it.
No,
Okay.
You were here.
Okay.
Y'all?
So-
They're all here.
So if you would just like to do the,
expert, yeah.
who's visited the site,
Okay.
ex parte contact, and a conflict of interest.
This is 1402? Okay, so regarding HR 1402, do any of the board members have a conflict of interest or ex parte contact regarding this application?
Mr. Chair.
No.
Yes.
I do reside in the house that's catty corner from the property that's being spoken about tonight.
Okay.
Yeah, but I do believe that I can make judgments about this property based on the board's standards and criteria and be fair in my judgment.
Okay, all right, that sounds good. Who has visited the site? Okay.
All right, thank you.
Walk out my back door.
I will rewind a little bit. Thank you. So just to give you a little lay of the land, we have Ganong Road as it turns to 4th, and then this part of Ganong is actually unbuilt, though when Wilson Homes were looking at doing their 5 homes, they only built 3 of the 5 homes, and this lot and the one next to it are still for sale, and this one has been purchased. They actually built, or even the person before Wilson, kind of did a preliminary work on a driveway here. The applicant will need to go back to our Public Works Department and get the right-of-way permit to work on, the fully approved driveway, and that will go through the geotechnical review and through the Public Works Department. It's not really purview of this process. If you notice the site, and I'll show it in some photos, there are some historic rock walls along 4th Avenue. Those are completely in the right-of-way and are not proposed at all to be affected by this, so I have not actually included it, and I'll show you in the photos. But if at all those rock walls were to be, I don't know how they could, but for some reason they were, that is a improvement. That is a improvement in the public right-of-way that would be triggered for historic review on its own, regardless of it being attached to a specific land use application. And because nothing's being proposed at that time and it's fully in the right-of-way, like most things in Kenema, the streets are 60 feet wide, but the road is 20.
Very
so
narrow.
there's a lot of additional right-of-way on either side of the road. So I wanted to. They also have a tree removal plan, and you can take a look at it. Some trees are to be retained and some are removed based on the site location. I do have some mitigation trees that are proposed as part of this application. They are especially addressed along this part and back in this area, because I think that's a lot of the majority of the larger trees are on this part of the property. The applicant is proposing a vernacular design. This is the front elevation. This is the side elevation. You'll see this kind of cross-gabled addition, 1 story. Here's the rear of the property. You can kind of see the back door for this gable addition. And then this is the interior side. We're going to talk a little bit about this elevation as we move forward. But this is, if I'm looking at this elevation, I'm actually on the next door to be constructed property that will one day come in to you.
Okay.
And if I'm on this front porch, I'm looking down onto 4th Avenue, just to give you.
4th Avenue. Oh,
The applicant is also proposing a detached garage, very simple. But I wanted to show you on the property, we'll talk a little bit about it, but this garage right now is proposed to be kind of put into the hillside a little bit, and they've been working with their geotech analysis to use the footings and the foundation of the garage. However, I did write into here to allow the Historic Review Board to give them a little additional discretion through the geotechnical review that if that garage needs to be brought forward, that they can do that without having to come back to the board. It's a one-car garage. You see there's a kind of a fair amount of area in here where moving it could allow them a lot of discretion. If it turns out that this works and they want to move forward and the geotech approves it, I'm supportive of staying here, but I'm also supportive of being brought farther away from the hillside and closer up. So and potentially
But you said not angle, but keeping
pivoting it to a right angle, or having it parallel to the house. So either perpendicular or parallel to the house. But one thing I made sure in my conditions was they couldn't have it as a kind of
on the angle.
on an angle.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I wrote a pretty wide condition of approval. So I do want the board to look at this and go through the public hearing process. And if you feel that you want to tighten that a little bit, please feel free to, but I kind of started a little bit wider, and then you can let me know what you feel tighter about. But I generally said kind of, if you want to take this box, I kind of said that this box area is kind of open for the garage. As you can see, as I'm looking, you probably can't see on your screen, but if you look behind you, or maybe you
Yeah.
can on your screen.
That's what
Okay, good. Okay, so I'm going to go back. Here's some views, both the applicant as on Google Maps. Where I'm standing here is right at that intersection of 4th and Ganong. So where these leaves are is kind of the beginning of that driveway that was started but not completed. So you'd be coming up and then going up this way. This is along 4th, and that's that rock wall I talked about. So the property kind of starts farther up here. So this whole area is in the right-of-way, and that's a fantastic amount of ferns, by the way. So here's a Google Street View I like. So once again, that's the beginning of that driveway, kind of pops up here. And coming back, this is actually, we're probably closer to the second parcel. I bet it starts about right here is the break between the two parcels. So I'm looking back this way.
Christina, can you go back to that?
Sure.
This
one?
Yeah. So when I went by there, I couldn't tell if those power lines were going into the property or just the
They're
poles
going
being
along.
supported.
Right.
Oh, right here?
That's what they are.
Yeah, those guys, but I couldn't tell if the lines were going back. Gotcha. I see this one going there.
So we're right here. This is Ganong, unbuilt
Yeah.
See
Ganong.
the
Yeah,
steady-
these guys
yeah.
here. Yeah.
And then that's that rock wall. So I will briefly touch on this. I talked about this at the last application. This one is also applying for a geologic hazards review. They really are kind of, it is a little bit of a chicken and egg because they also don't want to move forward till they know about the size of their house. So in a perfect world, we could all do this in one thing, but we are not geotechnical analysis, and we do not want geotechnical engineers to be designing historic buildings, so hence the problem. So once again, reiterate that if geologic review requires exterior alterations or the introduction of additional retaining walls, the applicant will be required to return to the Historic Review Board and request a modification of the project. That being said, we've generally allowed rockeries, things where they do terracing with actual rocks, and it's less than 3.5 feet tall, so it does not require a building permit.
Less than 4 feet?
3.5 feet.
It's 4, isn't it?
Is it 4 feet?
It's
4
4
feet.
feet. Okay, but I apologize. Rockeries that don't require a building permit and are more of a natural terracing, we've generally allowed. So unless the board gives direction, if part of the geotechnical analysis allows some terracing with rockeries, I'm recommending that be kind of pre-approved as part of this process.
Gotcha.
Because that generally has been the recommended solution for addressing those, rather than coming in with a more specific retaining wall. Okay, so the items I would like the board to look at tonight, The front elevation second story window, so normally, and I'll go back, but normally vernaculars have a very proportional, especially front elevation, and the windows on the second story are very, either 2 or 3, and they're all separated evenly and all proportional. And the applicant is working around a bathroom, and it's kind of been a little bit of a challenge, and my recommendation is where they are now, especially on the front elevation, it's just not really meeting the spirit of the vernacular design, which is these proportional windows that are the same size. So I'll go back and show you that. Here we go, there.
One on the right.
So specifically this bathroom window. And the wall's about right here, and you have and I can bring up, the plans are not in my PowerPoint, but I can bring them up. But basically we have a wall right here, and then we have the sink, and then the toilet on this side, if I remember correctly. So there's some recommendation of how do we work around the wall, and then as we move forward to the side elevation, if you move that bathroom window over here, is that giving you the proportional side elevation you want, or having kind of these two smaller one-over-one windows?
Did you say the toilet was there?
Well, the toilet is right here.
On that wall.
On that wall.
So
you would have
You can put the window there.
Yeah.
You could.
You can put it above the window,
Yeah.
but that pitch comes down. Okay.
So,
Gotcha.
So that's an outstanding issue that and I've asked the applicant what I'd like tonight, if we can either come to the applicant accepting a board's recommendation on how to revise that, or have the board approve a recommendation by the applicant on how to revise that front elevation. That's kind of my goal really tonight. If we can come up with a design solution for that, because I think for this, especially vernaculars, you really lose it when your kind of front elevation is not proportional. I think it's easier to lose proportionality in the side and rear, but
Off for symmetry.
I think there's a lot for keeping really true proportionality on those front elevations.
But are you saying if they move that window to the adjacent wall, and then it would be solid wall?
No, I think it would be more of, are they
You really
putting
have to-
3 windows, or are they taking 2 windows and moving them
But
kind of
Oh,
more
bringing-
centered?
Yeah,
you'd have
that'd
to,
be the same problem.
because you could move.
But we also have a dividing wall between a bathroom. So there's some interior work. And so I'm not proposing any design right now, but I guess the key is what I'm saying is that is, if the vernacular architecture is defined by its separate proportional windows, to me the front elevation is important to keep that. And the side and rears, I think, where you can be more flexible. So I'd like to get direction from the board on that one.
Do you have any issues with the first level windows that appear to go down to
They're
the ground
pretty
level?
low, and so we know we had talked about bringing them up. So we can talk to the applicant about that as well.
Okay.
I think that can be easily resolved.
Yeah.
That also may be a CAD
Yeah, that right
design.
window.
So
I don't
so
know.
I'd like to bring that up with the board as well. Let's go back. And then, of course, the side elevation window configuration, how that relates to moving that front window. We've asked for greater porch detailing just to get a better understanding of how they're going to be doing their front porch. Vernaculars are pretty simple, but they're also still finished. So are they going to have a chamfered top? I mean, what are they going to? Are they going to have a rounded top? What exactly are they proposing? So look a little more detail. So hopefully the applicant will be proposing that. And then finally, allowing some flexibility to move that garage. And I'll specifically read that condition of approval. Let's see. The applicant is allowed to adjust the location of the garage up to 30 feet and potentially pivot it to be perpendicular to the house to allow for greater flexibility for site access and protection of the slope located in the geologic hazard area. Staff, however, does not recommend that the garage be allowed to be sited on an angle to the main house. The small one-car garage can be placed on the site in various locations without impacting the prominence and visibility of the main house. Terraced rockery is once again over 4 feet, which I will change. Approved the geologic hazard review or an approved landscaping approach will be allowed on the site as a terracing option. Do not require additional review by the Historic Review Board.
Got it.
So I have the conditions of approval, though a lot of them are traditional ones. What I'd think I have anything specific.
Is staff okay with that garage door design?
The board can decide if, with vernacular, you have an interesting situation where 19th century homes didn't have 20th century garages. They had 20th century garages with 20th century garage doors.
They're usually added later, for
Right.
sure.
And so, if the board wants to make a specific recommendation, I generally for vernaculars keep it simple
Yeah.
and not over craftsman the garage, even though those garages were built
Yeah,
maybe
they
40 years
rarely had-
after the main house was
They
constructed.
rarely, if ever, had any stylistic affinity to the house.
Yeah.
That garage door is traditionally aluminum.
Right. So this is the same thing. It would be fiberglass or wood
Yeah.
as well. But if the board wants a closer to a bungalow aesthetic garage door, there is that's something they could do, since that probably would have the aesthetic of a garage door would have been built in the 20s. But knowing that we don't have a bungalow house and we have a vernacular house, and do you want to do more of a simpler garage door, it's more of a little bit of an esoteric preservation decision, and I'm kind of fine either way. So.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
Does anybody else have any other questions? Okay.
Okay,
So,
I'm gonna.
are you good?
Since the lot we'll be talking about is the front elevation, I'm going to go back and leave it
Gotcha.
right there.
Okay, so if the applicant
Oh.
can come forward, is
And
Todd
then-
Speck? Did I say it right?
I can bring up the.
Whoever wants to come up, if you guys want to state your name and your address, and then we'll get the time going. You've
I'm
got.
Todd with Mountain View Contracting.
What's your address?
13350 Southeast Bluff Road, Sandy, Oregon.
Okay.
I'm David Kemple, and 10449 Southeast Ellis Street, Portland, Oregon.
Okay. So you fellas have up to 15 minutes. So go ahead.
Okay, so going over the first issue with the front elevation on that window in the bathroom.
Yeah.
I was listening to your guys' comments earlier about moving it around to the corner, and that would give light, and then to do a false window. I was just kind of leaned over to them and asked them if they wanted to do a false window. They didn't want to do a false window. So if we did the symmetry as far as the windows that are in there now, it's going to kind of get into that wall. So do you guys have some suggestions?
Well, I'm just not looking at the floor plan, so
And I can bring that up if you want me to bring my floor plan up.
Please do.
Yeah.
it would be helpful, because otherwise we're just talking the
Well, it's
abstract.
in
Talking
the it's in the
theoretical.
packet, but
Yeah,
it'd be
I can
nice
bring
if we're all
it up.
looking at it. So can I ask you, on the second floor, as the stairs come up and around, is that square area open to below?
The square. First
Behind the shower, between the shower and the stairs in the master bedroom?
Yes.
Stairs. Okay.
So if you guys can see, that is,
1, 2, 3. There it is.
So is that
right there.
a tub and then a shower on the opposite wall?
yes.
Okay.
Oh, it's that's
Well, there's just a shower.
The
Yeah,
X is
there's
the
no tub.
shower.
Yeah, just a stand.
What's the other thing? Is that a closet?
That's a closet,
Okay.
yes. So you can see where if we did put a bigger window, of course, we could shrink that,
You could
Move the toilet right here.
Shrink the counter.
you could shrink the counter and shift it over, and
Mhm.
Move the toilet right here.
it's just going to be,
you could put the toilet. Well, then it's in front of the closet. I know where you're at.
Yep.
right,
It's
yeah.
tough.
I get it. If you eliminate that window or put it to the adjacent wall, then you've got two windows that are there, but they're not
They're not
symmetrical.
symmetrical.
And another thing we were thinking is to actually take the whole bathroom and move it to the closet area. We could do that too.
Then what would you do with that bathroom? Make it like just part of the bedroom, or would it be a big closet with
It
a
would
window
just be a
in it?
big closet where we could put a regular window in
Well, I mean, I'm not telling you what to do, but you've got plumbing over there adjacent to it anyway.
Exactly, with a wet
Stacks are
wall.
all there. The
Yeah.
vents are there.
there. Yeah.
You could do that. And,
Yes.
It's on more of an interior wall shared with
Are you all right with that?
Check with the boss.
I don't think you did. I don't think either of you really matter.
I know that they don't want that,
Yeah.
but
Right. No, I hear that.
It's not our first preference, but
Right.
I mean,
but I also don't want to kill a good plan just for the sake of a window.
Yeah.
There's got to be something here, because if that window's eliminated,
Yeah.
then you've got two windows there that
Would
are
have
not
to be
equal.
centered.
You can't get them right.
Yeah. And
I get. I
if
totally
it
get
would help
it's kind of a
solve-
dilemma there,
Yeah, it
and
is.
I went over it and over it to try to.
You know what I
Yeah,
really think
correct
is
it.
you could, that's a big closet. You could turn the closet over here and over the stair, and
I think that the shortcomings in the plan is leading to shortcomings in the elevation,
correct.
and so I wouldn't.
With-
I think the bathroom has to move to resolve that issue.
It's a problem solver.
It
And
is.
it becomes a non-issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other things are kind of secondary, you know. I mean, traditionally, if you look at any vernacular, they're going to have symmetry. I mean,
Right.
they weren't really ornate homes, but they were way into symmetry. But, if you have anything else, go ahead and talk if there's other things
Well,
on your mind.
I'm just gonna.
Yeah, yep.
One thing we could do is we could shrink that. We could shrink that wall over to get those windows symmetry in that bedroom.
You can use
If
the
you-
mouse. They can see if you.
Yeah, if you kind of direct it, maybe you
direct
can
the
see what
mouse,
you're
you
talking
can see the
about.
little arrow.
Yeah.
This is the wall I'm talking about. We could shrink this over, along here to match that. One of the things that I was running into is, to get the symmetry in the front. Can we go back to
Yeah,
the
actually,
front
if you
view?
click down at the bottom, you'll see a PowerPoint icon right there. Right there. Click on that.
There you go.
All the pages.
So, let me ask you, do you want the symmetry? So these would need to be centered
Yeah.
in this gable.
Yes.
Okay.
You either bring in the third window so you have three,
Right,
or
right.
you take those two and divide them.
Right. Right. And
Do they need to be bigger?
I just
or-
don't think
They
They
just
would
need
need
to
to be
be
of the same size.
But they also need to be an egress. So right now, what size are those windows? What's the width on those?
those are
Three?
They're 2.5 by 5. I
See,
think
they need
egress
to be
is
three,
6.
3x5s. They need to be
That's
3x5
code
for
for
code.
upstairs.
So you can't
Got to
really
have 6 square feet for.
on a single hung 3x5 is the minimum.
Is there a window on the other elevation?
So a 3 by 5 is
It wouldn't
not
be big enough.
Is
Oh,
not
no,
a
no.
2 to 1.
They're going to use
Yeah.
some of
The
the
windows.
And the
That's
reason why
You could-
we did it at
Because
2.5
it's
was because
Right,
it was a
but
2.
you'll run into code issues for egress with the window that wide. You'd have to go wider. You could go wider. You have to go wider, but you could go taller. You could do a 3 by 5.5, but you'll run into egress issues from life and safety from the building perspective.
And there's no other. Those are the only 2 bedroom windows.
That's the front master.
So-
Front. There's 2 in the back.
All the
which-
bedrooms on that second.
Those are the
level
only
have-
windows for that bedroom,
that
is
bedroom.
what she's asking.
Yeah.
And I believe
Yes,
that's-
okay.
yes.
Yeah.
So it looks
That's
like
going to be part
the.
of the closet. That's what I was doing.
And the other thing is, that's an issue that I see. The front windows on the main level are an issue.
They look right.
They're down to the ground. Is that what you're planning?
They're 3060.
In a 9-foot ceiling or 8-foot?
It's 9 foot.
Okay, so you can slam the header up,
Yes.
put those in,
Yes.
and then you're a 2-foot.
So they'd still have 81 1/8 studs, which
Well,
would put
what
it.
I'm also thinking
It'd
is
put
if
it
you
about
get
20 inches off.
if
the
you get
ground.
2 feet at the bottom, and you don't have to temper those windows,
Right.
and then that door needs to have a larger light on it. It almost looks like a utility door.
That would, yes. So it needs to be a half light. And that's what I wrote in
at least a half line.
Or
Or a three-quarter. Yeah.
Three-quarter line.
Those are minor things. Same with the porch stuff. But this,
Right now, it looks like a back door.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's kind of your guys' call. I mean, it's what I agree with Derek 100%.
We'll just switch the bathroom in the closet.
And that's probably where you'll be living for a while because you made that decision. so that's okay. If you can live with it, I'm sure she can too.
Yeah.
He hasn't turned around yet. We don't know for sure.
Yeah.
If you guys can live with it, force me to make the decision.
Okay. So the other issue was there was things come up. Unless you guys have any other comments you want to make, what I noticed with a lot of the vernacular, especially with some of the neighboring homes, is you've got the scroll work up at the posts. Mm-hmm. Those are pre-made things. It's easy to put on, and suddenly you've got a vernacular. Mm-hmm. The posts, there isn't much detail on that, or the handrail. That I guess we would need a detail on how that handrail is going to look, the massing of those posts. That's why I meant the little scroll
So
work.
is it required to have a tapered post on the front?
No. Not in this style. Absolutely not. Okay. You could probably put a built-up 6x6 post, something that.
Well, I was thinking just the 6x6, and then just a shoe
wrap
at the top, and then just wrap them,
and then bring some scroll work on either
in the corners.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That would get you a vernacular. If you can raise those windows on the main level, give a larger light to the like this. Get a larger light on the front door. Raise these windows so they're at 2 foot. And then, figure this out. If we move that, then we either put three.
We just do three.
Three windows. Yeah. So you come across and make this guy 3, and then you've got the symmetry.
So
we'll 3 foot wide windows make it
3x6s.
You could do 3x6, but I also concerned with you want to keep that
3x6 is
it's tall.
It's really tall.
What's the ceiling height upstairs?
It's 8 foot.
8 foot.
But see,
that's a story and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're starting at 6 foot. We're starting at 6 foot and then going up on a 10, 12 from there.
Yeah, and you know what? If you want to question that, you can call. I guess you'd have to call the county because you could talk to the building official. But I just know over and over and over, anything that's single hung has got to be a 3050. You could also do casements. If those were a 2.5 by 5 casement, that would meet egress. Casements are much different.
As far as egress, I've always went off of square footage of the window.
It changes from casement to single hung to slider. Mm-hmm. So they all are different egresses according to how the window operates.
And there are 1/1 windows that open as casements, but they look.
You would have a 1/. It looked like a single hung, but it would open as a casement, and that would meet your egress if you wanted to go narrow.
Sure.
So that's something we could make in the findings. But was there anything else that you fellas wanted to talk about in relationship to the plan, or any other questions you had regarding?
Yes, on the side. So, can I just? Oh yeah, we can go over here to the side. Another one. So on the placement of the windows here.
I don't have a problem with it. Was there a problem with the placement here?
I think it was if that window in the bathroom had to come around the corner, was that going to look?
Oh, well, that's a non-issue now.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're good?
Yeah.
Okay. On to the garage. Being 10 foot from the back of the property, with the majority of the foundation being working as a retaining wall. The way the garage sits, if we move it out, it's basically going to go in front of that dining room. And what are your thoughts on that?
But Go ahead.
I have no issues with what's been proposed or what we talked with staff.
Okay.
The
It
design
just
is fine in
provides
my
you
opinion.
additional
Okay.
flexibility.
It's going to be mostly concrete, which is not illustrated here. Just
Right.
looking at the topography, you're
Right.
going to have
You have a
some
retaining concrete wall.
Yeah,
You're gonna have a large back wall.
but all in all, I think it's in keeping with.
Yeah. You might want to move it more over this way than closer to the house, depending on how things are, but
Yeah.
there's flexibility with it.
I did have a question for
Yeah.
the applicant. Going back to the front elevation, you could do front or rear.
And you can just use the,
There we
for
go.
that too.
The upper fascia boards that come down when they. Would you describe that to me? What's going on there?
Well, it's a 2x12, and the designer cut that off, and we would just run that. You know, the barge boards itself is what you're
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah, it's more of a craftsman detail.
Well,
You'd bring it all the way down.
yes,
Yeah.
we would. We would.
2x12.
We wouldn't cut that. We
Okay.
wouldn't cut that tail. Yeah.
But a 2x12?
That's pretty
2
big.
by. Well, did I put a 2x12 or a 2x10?
2 by 12 though.
No, that's the pitch. 2x10 would be good.
2x12 is awfully large.
2x12 is pretty big. That's going to.
That was one of the things that I made a change, you know, because I had a 2x6 on there, and I was told that it had to be wider, so we
Yeah.
put that in there.
Yeah, but not 12.
Not a 12, so you want a
Better.
10?
Let's see, what's in
Yeah,
between?
usually do 10.
2x10.
2x10.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2x10, that's 9.5.
Yeah.
Was there any issues with the driveway?
I'm just looking at the house.
No.
Oh, sorry.
Will there be a trim on the house where the siding meets the underside of the roof? I imagine there's no soffit on this. I'm assuming.
No.
Or you mean like a 2x2 or something like that up in the corner for it to
Yeah.
butt into instead of the plywood?
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking?
Well, I'm wondering. So we've got a 2x10 at the arch, but what happens at the building face when it runs into the edge of the?
You know, every 4 feet, purlin's coming out to hold it up with a 2x2 in between it, and then siding up to that.
Up to the 2x.
So where those purlins are, typically, oftentimes we put a 2x2 in between, so that siding, so the siders don't have to notch around; they can butt right into
Right,
it, and it has a
right.
nice clean edge to
Right,
it with the
right.
purlins. And then what's the eave overhang on these on the gables?
16 inches.
Okay. Alrighty.
And are you actually proposing brick for the chimney?
Yes.
Very nice.
Yes.
Wow.
It'd be very pretty.
That was one of the big things that they wanted.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, that's
Good for
great.
you.
Okay.
Nice detail.
Well, does anybody else have any other questions?
And we have public comments too.
Yeah. Does anybody have any other questions for the applicant?
I do not.
Thank you. Okay, so we've got public comments. Oh, well, David Kemp, that was you, huh? Yeah.
I commented.
Wow, I get to fold one over. Then Howard Post. If you could state your name and your address, please. And
Howard Post, 302 Blanchard, Oregon City.
you've got 3 minutes.
That's about all I gotta need. I have just 2 or 3 questions. My first one is compatibility.
Do you have copies or
You can have these, I've got copies of them.
Okay, so this is Exhibit 1.
okay? Are those?
Compatibilities
Oh, go ahead.
said is similar, not the same, but similar with the neighborhood. A lot of vernaculars are skinny, steep pitch, and skinny windows. That's the house across the street, 2 or 3 houses around there.
I know these houses.
That's compatibility is an issue. I think it's being resolved. They redesigned the plans once, and it's coming closer, I think, to what it should be. But I don't think it's compatible. My second question is about toe and slope cut into the hillside.
This is the same one.
This is Exhibit 2.
Exhibit 2. So this packet's Exhibit 1?
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
I've been there, you saw most of these anyway, just a little different shots.
Yeah. Nice paper.
It said, except in connection with geotech rehabilitation plans approved in accordance with chapter, cuts shall not remove the toe of any slope that contains a known landslide or greater than 25% slope. I think that slope is pretty steep, to say the least, but it's just concerned with that. We've had a lot of discussion about this, and one of the suggestions is, why don't they move the house closer to 4th Avenue, and that would take less of the cut of the hill, if that would be, that's you guys' decision. They got 27 feet there to the edge of the right-of-way. If they move that closer to the road, that would take less cut out of the hill. So, but I mean, that's not my call.
What kind of a cut is it going to take now?
I don't know, but the slope's 21%.
Yeah, I know. I live on it.
But some of the comments were 35.
Yeah.
No, not really. No. It's not ours at all.
I'm just here to,
But this letter.
Anyway, I'm
Okay.
bringing this up now because if I don't bring it up now, I can't bring it up later. But we're leaving it to you guys to decide this, I mean,
Okay.
if it does, then the board will make the decision. But just some of the thoughts from me as a personal.
Yeah, we're just not part of the geo part of this whole thing. We're just on the design.
But it just, man, we want the house to go because it's going to be a showpiece.
You bet.
Because you're coming up Ganong, and we want it to look good, but we just, cutting in that hillside under Paul's house, unless you put a big retaining wall in, is going to be pretty tricky, I think. And geotech is going to tell you about that and the slopes, because
Okay,
there's
thank
some
you.
pretty heavy cuts there to be made.
Thank you.
Anyway,
Okay. All right. Thank you, Howard. I know it's way up high. Paul Edgar.
Can I comment on
Actually,
Oh,
yeah,
wait
we
till the
can.
end.
We'll wait till you can.
You'll come back for rebuttal after these.
response?
Yeah, it's way up higher.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's a whole
All
lot
right.
of that.
Are these all okay?
It's
So
like a zoom on that.
this is Exhibit 3 tonight.
So much paper.
Okay.
I'm Paul Edgar, live in Kenema,
Address?
211 Fifth Avenue, Oregon City. So I've been the land use chair of the Kenema Neighborhood Association for, let's say, about 8 years or 9 years, I don't know. I live in a remodeled, contributing 1880 era historic vernacular style house. Our house is immediately above this property, and we own the physical lots and property for 10 years before we sold it, ran out of money building our house, and I had to sell it, rebuilding it. We're thrilled to have a new contributing house and neighbor in the Kenema Historic District. My personal comments are about our shared responsibility in creating structures that are contributing in a manner that does not detract from existing contributing inventory of historic buildings which represent the core reasons for having a National Register Historic District status. Prior to my wife and I embarking on the rebuilding of our house, we studied vernacular design in an attempt to do what is appropriate. I know I'm not an expert on on vernacular design houses, but I know what exists in Kenema and with the contributing buildings as examples. I know that we have what we have in these design elements that are contributing. They become the criteria whereby we have direct comparisons and allow us to determine if an infill house will become a plus or minus to the National Historic Register District. It is just this simple. Does it detract or is it a non-detracting structure? It is my opinion that the proposed Kemple House is not a historic Kenema District vernacular design, but more of a hybrid big box house with virtually no contributing vernacular design type features. This is directly comparing it. You've got pictures. The massing with what is being proposed is not found in Kenema with contributing vernacular designs. Most of the historic houses are narrow and longer, rectangular, not virtually square. In the Kenema, 9 out of 10 vernacular houses have 12-12 pitch roofs. They have 3-to-1 height-to-width relationships on their windows. This proposed 2-to-1 height-to-width relationship becomes one more element in the totality of creating a detracting hybrid design that is no more vernacular than it is Queen Anne. It would fit in most any neighborhood, but in Kenema it becomes detracting. A key problem with creating this house with its massing is how the width of the house creates a critical problem in leveling of the lot and how it forces or creates cuts into a very steep slope. I have measured the slope out and it's in excess of 25%.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay.
Yeah.
Doesn't he, for a neighborhood, does he get 15?
Well, I don't know if Howard Post is the neighborhood chair, so
Oh.
I don't know.
You're done. But thank you.
who,
I thought it was, I didn't know Howard was.
Yeah.
Howard could add
I don't
more.
know who's speaking. Oh.
Gotcha. And, well, Paul, thanks. You got just about to within about 3 or 4 sentences. Thank you.
Okay. Now rebuttal.
Is
Or do
there
we have someone else?
If there is no one else who wants to speak, so at this time the applicant.
Actually, I think, yeah, Denise was for. I'm sorry.
Denise, then you've got
she
3
had
minutes.
For both of them, she doubled.
I put all my
Yeah.
comments on one sheet, so I have all 3 applications.
Okay. Go
Good
ahead and state
evening.
your name. And
Again, Denise McGriff, and I'm here speaking to you on behalf of the Kenema neighborhood. I provided design advice to them and met with Dave and Todd, and I wanted to thank them again on the record for meeting with us. I will say we dumped a lot of information on them. One of the things that I don't think I have to remind you all about is that this is the Kenema National Register District, so your level of review is going to be higher than in the McLaughlin Conservation District, and the information that you are going to make a decision about needs to reflect that. And I feel very, very strongly about that, which is why I'm bringing it up, even though I know you know it, but I wanted to be on the record. So from the first design that we looked at with Todd and Dave, they have really, really come a long way. What I found and what I told Todd is that the level of detail on this plan is certainly missing, and it's why I don't like those CAD drawings, because you can't get the detail. And I think it would go a long way for your making very specific findings if you had them resubmit a drawing. I'm not objecting to your making a decision tonight, but you need to have them resubmit a drawing that reflects more accurately what you required to go along with your findings and conclusions. And the reason I say that, again, it's the Kenema National Register District. And Christina made a lot of statements in here and findings that they're going to have this, this, and this. But again, it doesn't reflect that. And I think because it's Kenema, your drawings need to reflect what they said they're going to do, and it would help your findings so that they're specific and you can refer from one thing to the other. I think on the McLaughlin house that you just approved, there was sufficient detail for you to look at that and make your findings that go along with that. But again, I really am looking for some very specific findings on this particular application because of the variety of things that you are requiring them to have detail on and to do. And I think it's really going to be to your best interest to do that. And that's all I really wanted to say.
So, Denise, do you have, given the staff's recommendations or findings and what we've talked about tonight, is there anything that you think we're missing?
No, I thought the garage doors, yeah, they're too detailed. They should be as plain and as unobtrusive as possible. I totally agree with you on the windows. I think I probably beat that horse to death when I met with Todd and Dave and said it's symmetry. This is what a vernacular is all about. Everything is either paired up, and all the pictures that they had in their application showed all that symmetry. And so, again, that's part of that translation that you're trying to get them to make. And because it's in Kenema, I think that's even more critical than in the McLaughlin district. Because again, it's going to be there. And Again, when the SHPO, State Historic Preservation Office, looks at the Kenema District, we don't want the new construction to say, oh, we've lost our integrity here because we have all these things that don't really quite work. So you're doing a really good job in trying to make them work and trying to get that. I have to disagree with my friend Paul. I don't have an objection to the pitch of the roof. I think that the 10-12 is okay. 12-12 is better. But that would require it to be redesigned and have a narrower, skinny house, which,
Right.
in the real world, I'd like that. But,
Okay.
we're trying to get a midway point so that the applicants have something they can deal with, you have something you can approve, and we still meet the standards in the National Register District.
So what you're looking for is validation that they've accepted all of the recommendations and that shows in a revised plan.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And I want to thank those from the neighborhood and their knowledge and expertise on this and their feelings on it. I appreciate it. If you want to come for rebuttal, you can come back up and rebut if you choose anything that's been said if you want. So you can come up now.
Uh-oh. Don't you say a word.
I do have a set of elevations, but I was not able to get them on an 8x10. I have a full set.
What I can do is that you can show. Are these revised elevations? Or
No, they're just the elevations of where the house is actually going to sit.
I mean, the topography of the house, how it looks.
Yes.
With this,
Is it more detailed than what we already have?
Yes.
I'd like to see it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and then what I can do is I'm going to add this as Exhibit 4, and what I will get is if you can send me the PDF, I will add it into the record of what they are seeing right now.
That is the.
I picked these up from the engineer.
Yeah. That's fine. I don't want to have
Can
to
you,
file
like,
those. So.
Possibly hold them up so we can see and you can like
Yeah.
look
And then
show it.
we'll need to share it with everyone.
Yeah, so we can see.
So let me get
Here, you want to
Oh yeah, do that.
We'll have him pass it around.
Well, you can take a 2-minute while we have a powwow up there and look at it. So.
Okay, walk it around like you're in the wrestling match. Round 2.
Round 2.
Okay, that's probably when it's cut
You can
in.
go closer.
They cut in.
Yeah.
They're cutting in, filling. You're going to try and balance that, but there's going to be some rockery walls behind the house to get that.
There has to be.
There's going to have to be.
It's
Yeah.
hard for you to be Vanna.
Here I am.
Still has that thing.
Yeah. Well, and not
Which is not a big
completely-
deal, but that's-
It's like if you had the dotted lines of where that slope is in relationship to the house. That's what I was looking
Yeah.
for. So you're cutting in. It's flat, but if there was a dotted line showing that
The
slope,
pitch.
where the
Yeah.
slope actually
yeah,
Yeah.
that then you can see where your retaining walls are and how much you really are digging.
You're going to have a pretty good sized retaining wall back there, I would think.
Actually, what I'm proposing is not a retaining. What I'm proposing is a slope.
with a certain.
Regrade it, you mean?
Great.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
graded.
To regrade it. So, basically 10 feet in the back.
Flat and then pitched at a certain slope so that you've got.
Can you hit the slope at the top though? And
Excuse me. We need to talk into the microphone.
Oh,
So you can please do that.
so the question is, if you regrade it to make it a little flatter,
Yes.
you're still going to have a height ahead up there. Are you going to have to put a rock wall at the top of that, or
you're just going to be at a certain
it's going
pitch
to peak it? You know?
Yes.
Okay.
because there's a certain pitch you can go at that keeps that slope.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is.
And
Okay.
then with a drain at the bottom of it.
Right.
Yep.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Did you want to address any of the concerns from the neighborhood or anything else? Oh, can you folks sit down, please, as we're talking? Thanks.
About one thing about, resubmitting a set of drawings, I think that we could come up with, I would like to come up with something for an approval, so I can go forward.
Can I ask you about the porch? What is is it a deck or is it concrete?
It's a deck.
It's a deck.
Wood.
And so, do you mind holding up that elevation again, that side elevation again? So is that actually going to be held up a few feet off of the
Yes, 4
grade?
feet.
4 feet off the grid. Okay. So is there steps? Oh, I
So
see.
you got
The front.
Oh,
I think he
okay.
wants to see
Yeah.
the front.
It'll have steps off.
That is the front.
It'll have steps off the front of it.
The front's on the left.
Oh, and it's facing north, right?
Yeah, yeah.
The front's facing north.
It's facing
This is
West.
facing. Now this would be facing south.
South.
This
That's
is
it.
north.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, right from the,
I'm sorry, Christina. What were you going to say?
yeah,
This would be north.
okay.
Yep. Okay. What were you?
The one question I had looking at the front porch and seeing the gap between the finished grade and the bottom of the front porch, it seemed like to be about 2 to 3 feet, which seemed a bit.
Can
I want
mitigate
the
that
bottom of
with-
the porch to be at grade. I don't want to have it,
Elevated.
have an elevated porch. So I think that.
Elevated by how much?
Well, that's what I'm just looking at those grading. It just triggered me that it could be.
What is the elevation on that?
It can,
Because the 4th Street elevation
Looks like maybe 3 feet.
before
Yeah.
appeared to be the front elevation. Now it doesn't look like it's the front elevation or like it's the actual approach to the house. Has the front door switched to the north elevation?
No.
Do you have
Yes.
the
go
west
back to the
elevation?
front elevation.
The front.
How do we get up to that door?
Stairs.
There's
Yeah.
stairs right
It's gonna
there.
have to be stairs.
You got stairs. You're probably gonna have 4 or 5.
Oh, I'm sorry, I just don't see it.
They're not on there yet. No,
Yeah.
there's no stairs. But you're gonna have stairs.
Yes.
And it's gonna come from the,
You're gonna have rails.
straight up or
handrails.
Yes.
and coming up across or straight up?
Straight up.
Yeah, you're probably gonna have 4 or 5 risers.
Yeah.
So just looking at like a number of how much.
It's probably 3 feet. There's
yeah,
probably
which
gonna.
seems a lot.
It's if that's half inch equals
This
a
is half
foot.
inch. It'll scale out to about 2.5 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 2.5
4
feet. You're probably gonna have
That's a lot.
4 risers, 3 treads.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that much.
I'm looking at what's the treatment underneath the porch.
That's where you can mitigate with plantings,
Exciting.
or with we could talk about that with like the heavy squared lattice, or
Or siding.
siding down below.
Yeah, I'm fine with any of those options.
Yeah,
But-
not the
but
cheap
it-
Not-
lattice, but the heavy 1-inch,
nice one, too.
$120 a sheet stuff.
Oh,
Um,
jeez.
Siding.
siding would be more money.
Siding would be more money, but
Yeah.
it'd look better.
Then lattice, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Did you have anything else you wanted to? No. Okay. Is there any other comments before I close this?
Almost there.
Denise McGriff again, if you're going to suggest lattice, make sure it's not the.
That's why I
modern-
said the square
Square.
heavy
It's
stuff.
gotta
not
It's
triangle.
actually
Yeah,
an
it's
inch
gotta be
thick.
the square.
Yeah.
Square holes.
Not the
Yeah.
diamond.
So again, so that was very helpful to see the difference in the elevation. So that plan is not as up to date as that plan, and then there should be a third plan somewhere. That
Eventually.
Third plan?
the plan that he just presented
Oh,
you
I
is
see.
the old plan,
Do with the correct
but
contours.
it just showed the elevation.
Oh, that was
for
the
it.
old
Didn't-
one?
It didn't change. Yeah, just for elevation. So
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
that was my concern. What she said about the difference between where, and I said, yeah, we didn't see a design with any stairs
Right.
or steps or details. So I'm like, okay, there's one more thing to add to the new plan.
Right.
Bring them back from the
Thank you.
Denise, thanks.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Here's your rubber band.
Go ahead.
same time.
You can come for a couple minutes.
Just to point out, the corner down of where it says 4th out, the corner of the lot is where the driveway comes up and goes parallel. And the corner post is right
You want to
above
use the
4th
mouse?
Avenue.
Can you use the mouse and point to where you?
Okay, the driveway up starts right here.
Yeah.
And if you go up here, that's 50 feet up the hill from the driveway, from the corner post, and it's an elevation change of 40 physical feet in elevation.
I don't think so.
40 feet.
30, well, maybe 30.
I mean, you got a
Pre-graded.
21% slope.
It's excuse me, it's right there. It's at approximately 30% slope. So from the top corner to when I go back, All I'm telling you is that the corner of the lot, where the corner post is that I was pointing at, actually is where the driveway turns, and so the driveway does not extend up the hill. And to extend the driveway up the hill, as is reflected, cuts into the bank of a 30 to 40% degree bank going up right up in front of my house. And and that bank has slid because it's in a landslide area.
Okay.
And so I'm telling you that the contour and the dimensions that are being shown are totally out of sync with reality. Totally.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, if there's nobody else, I'm going to close this. It's closed. All right, so we can talk about this amongst ourselves. And Christina.
Just for process, not content. Sounding like what I can do, I think can resolve some of the concerns by the neighbors. And knowing that they still are doing their geotechnical report, in this case, we can actually have, as part of the notice of decision and findings of fact, the applicant can turn in the revised plan, which then can be part of the record, based on the specific line items we create, rather than doing when you come into Christina 4 or 5 months from now with the building permit, because there's so many pieces of detail, and to allay the fears, we can hold off on releasing that decision finding facts until we get the revised drawings. So that's one option. Then we have it in the record, and then everyone knows what it's what the board saw, and so then we can release the findings of fact then.
So you're saying not a decision?
No, it will be a decision, but let you know that we.
Yeah, it would be on the permit. It would have to be reflective of that.
Right, but we can actually include the revised drawing as part of this record if it's just addressing
Those concerns.
items that are in the concern, if that's something that the board wants to do. And I think that can be done through our normal process.
Okay. Does anybody have anything they want to say or talk about this thing?
I just know from experience that when you're working with hills and slopes, that the grading before the construction begins is extremely important and can change a lot of mitigating factors when it comes to landslides and things like that.
Derek?
Yeah. I think I was really concerned about the front elevation, and we worked through those items. I think the topography is probably a little bit more extreme than what they have shown here, but it's reasonable, and the application is pretty doable. I do think for future applications, I understand this level of information is as far as anyone wants to go until they know they can move forward. I would like to see more in future applications, just so that staff knows some information on detail that's a little bit beyond this. I think
related to topography and geo, or related
related to the detail of the house.
You know, like when we get these things, stairs, handrail, there needs to be details.
Yeah.
You know, section whatever, there needs to be a page of details for knee braces, handrail. That's what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Because we end up making those findings or conditions based on lack of information.
I really don't want to tell them what they have to do. I want them to bring me what they want to do and approve that, knowing that it's what they want and it fits the criteria. Then that is why I make that a point. This house is fairly simple. In fact, it's very simple. But that's also the Canadian neighborhood as a whole. There's not a lot of ornamentation in there. And where it is, it's sparing. The south elevation, I'm not a huge fan of the proportionality, but the rest of the house is pretty much in keeping. And I can see that they're really trying to do this right, especially since with the modifications we've discussed. So.
Okay. Bob, anything?
I'm good.
Good.
Well, I'm almost good. So here's what I'm looking at. There's been concern about proportion aesthetic, if it's going to fit, if it's not going to fit, what it's going to do. What I found, I don't have a problem with this house. I don't. I think somebody's trying to do right by it. I think the concerns from the neighborhood are somewhat just, but I think trying to lay down some groundwork with respect. Part of the vernacular style is, and Howard, in your letter, that was part of the package, was that you said there was little or no detail in the presentation, but that's the style. Vernacular is a very simple style. I've studied it for years, what vernacular is, and when I look at that neighborhood and I see what's being proposed, the houses that are pulled out in question are houses that are scattered around but are not the predominant theme in that neighborhood. The predominant theme in that neighborhood is anything but historic. So when I look at something like this where someone's trying to make a concerted effort to try and stay with the style based on what they can do, I actually applaud it, and I think that the neighborhood needs to be more of getting around it instead of fighting it or trying to make things right. When I look at that slope, that's not my gig. If it becomes an issue where the geo is going to affect it, then we'll deal with it. The houses around it are somewhat dire, actually. And so when I look at this, I think working around these and the ability to make this house work, it fits. I think it works, and it definitely will enhance the neighborhood and actually enhance your home and those around it. And I have to know that part of this is the geo stuff we can't get into unless it affects the project, but it keeps coming up. So I think with what I'm seeing, with the findings that we came up with, I don't have a problem with any of those, what we discussed, as long as we can walk through them, unless someone has a problem with what I'm saying here. But I'm just, every time we deal with Kenema from McLaughlin's neighborhood perspective, it is a historic district. It's on the National Register. That's a big deal. By the same vein, you could almost remove that district, keeping by most of the homes that are in the project or in the district, because so many are ahistoric, and the entire area is a geohazard. And there's homes that have been sitting there 100+ years, so I'm not too concerned about that. And as far as the aesthetic and style of the house, so I just wanted to say that.
There's one more thing I want to add, and that's goes back to our guidelines and our general design principles for historic neighborhoods with new construction. It says it shall not attempt, not even attempt, to be historic, this new construction. So verbatim building is just not going to happen.
Yeah, but I also appreciate the neighborhood, Kenema neighborhood representatives wanting to keep that purest sense, but yeah, we can't make it completely pure, and I don't. So anyway, so that's what so if we could talk about those findings and what we discussed.
Mm-hmm. Though before I start, I did not get a chance to write down the direction on the porch railing details, as well as also that scrolling. So if you could help me out on what that would be.
Yeah, there's the house directly across the street.
One of the scrolling, but I'm sorry, the detail on the porch posts.
Oh, the posts.
The railings.
I think what we talked about was
a 4x4 wrapped in cedar.
A 4x4 or a 6x6 wrapped in cedar, with scroll work at each of the where the post connects to the beam.
Mm-hmm. I think a 6x6 can be. You
think that's
really
too big?
That's big.
So a 4x4 wrapped, 4x4 post wrapped in cedar. The handrail, I don't believe there was if there was a description, but it should be a bottom rail, the baluster, and 2 top rails. To give it a little bit of proportion and a character. I mean, I could be really specific on that if you want.
Not a plumbing pipe?
I mean, what I would recommend is a 5/4 by 3 on the bottom, a 5/4 by 3 on top, with a 2x4 on top of that, and that would give.
I wouldn't make those sorts of recommendations because
that's what I'm saying. Do I need to be that specific? Because I don't want to be.
Do not be that specific. That will not pass the load test.
I want to see general direction about how
Then I need
they
somebody
should
here
be
to say,
finishing their.
how do we say that without being that specific? That's why I said it. That's specific.
Yeah.
Specific. What are you going to recommend for a porch rail?
Well, I would say that it has to be in keeping with what was shown on the elevation.
It's
a
not
top
very
rail,
detailed.
A bottom rail.
And that's about it. And let them decide.
2x2 pickets. or
Yeah,
something
I
in keeping
guess.
With that.
I mean, that's all we see right here.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why.
I wouldn't want to see the pickets from the as they cross the top or bottom rail from the street.
No.
I don't see that on this elevation, and I don't want to see that because it's historic.
Does it even need pickets?
Yeah, it's got to have top and bottom.
Yeah.
So can we just?
Yeah, that's fine.
So then, what
So-
I said was very specific for
Or-
a
but I-
reason.
but I have 4x4.
Trying to find out where do we go to make it more
So
general.
4x4 wrap posts with 2x2 pickets and a top and bottom rail.
That works for me.
I believe we also mentioned some sort of
And
trim wrapping at
and-
the top or bottom
Yes.
of those.
The scroll work.
Yeah.
Is that what you meant?
Yeah,
Okay.
this kind of thing.
Yeah,
is scroll.
and actually
I don't know how you call these
the
things.
Wilson homes
The
actually.
diagonal brace.
Yeah, it's like a
They
diagonal
did
decorative
that.
brace.
Yeah.
It's very much a vernacular feature.
They're all. It's like I feel like the salesman came through Kenema one day because they're all the same.
Yeah.
You can get those at any
Yeah.
supply house. You can order those online.
Yeah,
There's
they're on.
different
They're
styles.
on one of the Wilson homes.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Home Depot.
So here's what I see. That right now you've not proposed any changes to condition number 2 about the flexibility, though this is the time if you want to reduce my
No.
big box that I created.
No.
You can. If not, we'll leave number 2 as is, though I will add 4 feet rockeries, not to 3.5 feet. Then we also have number 7 about we can keep it as it is, proportional window design, and 2 or 3 proportional separated windows, utilizing we said a general 2-to-1 proportion, but you're saying that
The windows have to follow
they have to
code.
follow code. So, do you want to cite the exact window
Well, I
proportion you
know
want?
code-wise they have to be 3050s for single hung. For casement, I think you can drop down to 2.6 or 2.8.
But
Height's
check
not
it,
an easy,
make sure.
but that has to be verified.
Yeah, the
I can't-
305 is not that, you're not getting the.
It's not the tall, but they can go taller. But
Okay.
that's the minimum size for egress. It's positive. On a single hung window, you need a 3-foot wide window, 3x5 minimum, and that hasn't changed. Things change if you're on a lower level.
Yeah.
No. But if on a slider it's a 4040, and on a casement I think it's.
Well, I'm thinking
2.5.
because there's minimum widths and heights and area.
Correct.
And those are typically found within a 3050, but not essentially. If he could provide a manufacturer, or showing specifically that he can provide an
egress
2.6.
But
by
it's
5
also
foot,
got to
that
be
means
verified
egress.
by the building
So I
department.
guess my question is, are you okay with the reduced length of the window for the 3050? Is it still going to give you that vernacular look?
Upstairs, I
Or
think they were talking about
upstairs.
upstairs, the smaller, the narrower windows.
Right, and that's what we're talking about. It's egress out of a bedroom. is
Well,
what it
you
is.
you can't get a proportional window with a story and a half. I think that's what we're coming up against.
That's right.
So I would rather have something that meets code, and that is a story and a half.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a life safety thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's
So I'm going to take out
And
that
then
last
it's-
sentence, as the applicant shall occupy either 2 or 3 proportionally separated windows on the second story.
Yes.
All right. So then the porch detailing number 8, we'll add what we just spoke about, which is the 4x4 wrap posts, the 2x2 pickets, top and bottom rail, and the addition of the 2 brackets will be added to condition approval number 8.
brackets in each.
In each.
Yeah. Yeah, there'd be 1, 2,
Okay.
3, 4, 5, 6.
And then removing, actually, condition of approval number 9 altogether. Let's talk about the side elevation.
Oh, yeah.
We had number 10, that the neighborhood recommended a louvered vent on the front gable as a way to break up the massing. And I have that as condition approval number 10.
Wait a minute. Let me look at that.
Is it going to
What
be
kind-
square?
No, it'd be more of a rectangle. I don't know of any homes that have that.
I'm
I don't-
not in favor of that condition.
I don't think that needs to be part of it.
Okay, so we're taking number 10 out. And then we have the applicant shall redesign the plan to provide the following. And I have either a 2/3 or 3/4 light front door.
Front door, yeah. That's the
We
one.
have that the porch shall be wrapped in either the porch,
Posts?
bottom of the porch should be
Oh.
wrapped with either siding or square 1-inch lattice.
Correct.
Is there a height, like is there a point if we get, I don't want to be a place where we're realizing that we have maybe 8 risers. I think this also happened on our fair, Mr. C, where it says, is there a limit on?
I think if you
how
get to a
mu- how
certain
much-
height, then it's got to go to siding.
Yes, it does.
No, but and also is there a limit on how much siding? I don't think it's going to happen, but for some reason the geotech comes back.
Oh,
and we have
yeah,
a taller
yeah,
house, and there's
I mean,
a.
how tall?
I would say a limit of lattice 42
feet.
inches.
Oh,
3.5 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, beyond that, it would
And
have
then
to be
siding
siding.
beyond that.
Yeah. Then it becomes siding after.
But then is there a maximum?
No, well,
I
maximum
don't-
of 6 feet, I would say. But
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think it's going to get that high, though.
I don't
I
think it's
just
going to get that
wanted
high
to put
either. Sure.
Okay, and then we also have raised the ground floor windows to be a minimum 2 feet above the floor.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I'm only sad because then they don't have to temper those windows, and I
I
don't think it
think-
looks right too low.
18 inches, a minimum of 18 inches.
Then they're got to be tempered.
No.
Yeah. If you're below 20,
Well-
believe me, man. If you're below 24 inches, or if at the top of that sill when you open that window, if it's less than, I believe, 22 inches around there, it has to be tempered.
We
It costs more.
No,
we
no.
can agree to disagree.
I think it's one of
I
those.
think-
Are you fine with? where
It doesn't
is,
matter.
Or do you feel
If
like
he wants
it
to
needs-
say it's 18 inches, I
do you
don't
feel
care.
it needs to be raised?
Yes, it does.
Yes.
need
It
to be.
definitely.
Okay, so
If you want to say a minimum of 18 inches.
Okay. And to bring continue the barge boards and not cut them, and be
Oh, yeah.
210 and not
2 by 10.
2 by 10, not 2 by 12.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to save.
So
money.
and I think Chair McLaughlin made a lot of good findings that I'm going to listen again on the recording of this and write down as part of our findings of fact.
Okay.
But what I'd like before we finish, because I'm going to add these findings to our actual decision tonight, if there's any additional findings you'd like to make of why you've made these additional conditions tonight, and why
I did that
you
on the
feel
last
this is a site specific. Why these
It's your turn.
site-specific conditions, and why? So if the city commission perchance looks back, we can make findings of
Could be
how we
that.
got to where we are tonight.
I mean, Cindy said the fact that the CAD drawings were a bit lacking required us to ask for additional findings to make the details necessary.
Thank you.
Does that work?
No.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the findings of facts based on your comments, the conditions of approval, ask for the applicant's resubmittal, and then what's allowed by our process to mail that notice of decision out once we get that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Good?
So does that mean next meeting?
No.
No, it doesn't.
No.
Can I tweak that last condition just a little bit? Don't hit me, John. So the condition as stated, or I would be fine if they went to a 2x6 barge rafter if they had some sort of larger trim where the siding meets the underside of that.
2x6 barge?
Yeah,
It's too small.
If they went with a 2x trim at the siding to soffit transition, I think that would give it a little bit more ornament that you could get away with a smaller or something of that
I think
size.
because of the height of that, if you put a 2x6 on, it might look almost naked. I would stick with a 2x10. If you want to put in there just to make things happy,
No.
Minimum 2x6, maximum 2x10 barge.
They don't want it, so we won't put it in.
They'll put it in.
They're going to do what they're going to do.
Yeah.
2x10 will look great.
We're giving them the option. They said, we already said our
Thank you
option.
very much, but
Yeah.
no.
All right. Do we
All right.
have a motion?
Okay, so does someone want to make a motion on the findings for HR 1402?
I move we approve HR 1402 with the new findings.
Someone want to second that?
I'll second.
All right.
Call for a vote.
Derek Knudsen.
Aye.
Bob Stewart.
Aye.
Cindy Toll.
Aye.
Chair McLaughlin.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Go forth and build. Thanks.
What did you say?
No, they can go build in the middle of the night.
So
No.
real quickly tonight, I need to request a continuance to
Yeah.
HR 1403 for
But
noticing.
I just want to say
Yep.
thank you everybody for sticking this out and hanging in there. Appreciate it, and it's just part of the process.
There we go.
So if we can make a motion to have a continuance for 14-2021 HR 14-3 new construction McLaughlin Conservation District request for continuance. Does someone want
To next March
to
25th.
to March 25th?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Yeah. Bob Stewart.
Aye.
Cindy Toll.
Aye.
Derek Metzen.
Aye.
Chair McLaughlin.
Aye. This meeting is adjourned.
Is that continuous?